order before we begin. For some of you who may not find a seat in this hall, we have made arrangements in the Shah Jahan Hall where we have a large screen where you can witness the going-ons of the stage here. So please do find a seat, and if you don't, please move into the Shah Jahan Hall. We'd like to have the house in order before we bring our guests in. Thank you for your cooperation. Thank you very much. Morning, ladies and gentlemen, and a very, very warm welcome to each one of you to the Global Economic Policy Forum 2024, organized by the Ministry of Finance and the Confederation of Indian Industry. The theme, Decadal Priorities for the Global Economy. We begin this session with a film which you will witness on the screen in front of you. Can we have the film, please?
Learning from the past, preparing for the future, embracing change, and driving innovation.
So I would think the CII should keep this as an annual calendar event. Make sure that this becomes a forum for policymakers to look to and seek ideas and thoughts with which policy which will have a positive bearing on the emerging market and economies and also the global south.
The CII Global Economic Policy Forum charts the roadmap for dynamic global growth. In partnership with the Ministry of Finance, the second edition of the forum, organized by the Confederation of Indian Industry, prioritizes the theme of decadal priorities for the global economy. Building on the impactful conversations of the first edition, GEPF explores pathways for future global collaborations and defines inclusive and sustainable actions by governments, industry, and other stakeholders.
If the emerging market countries are going to be the growth engine and the learnings from the G20 India presidency all indicate towards the need for greater discussion and a global engagement to understand where exactly the world will have to move from where we are today, at least for the next 20-25 years.
GEPF brings together thought-provoking ideas on contemporary global and Indian economic policy issues for the world. Coming at a time of global challenges and an increasing complex economic environment, this is a platform for intensive deliberations on key tracks of economic growth, resilience, global cooperation, inclusion, sustainability, technology and innovation. Revealing key insights for economic leadership of the nation, as well as thought leadership for the global south and the world. Through collaboration, the world can find solutions to shape a brighter tomorrow and discover new opportunities for a resilient global economy.
Can we hear it for the film, please? Thank you. May I now invite on stage Honorable Minister for Finance and Corporate Affairs and our chief guest for today, Ms. Nirmala Sitharaman, and our two guest ministers, the Honorable Minister Mr. Dorji from Bhutan and His Excellency Mr. Zamir from the Maldives. May we request you all to join us on stage. May I ask Mr. Tuhin Kanta Pandey, Secretary Finance, Government of India, to also join us on stage. May I invite our CII Presidium, Mr. Sanjeev Puri, Mr. R. Dinesh, and Mr. Chandrajit Banerjee to also join us on stage, please. And to begin with this session, I'd like to invite Mr. Chandrajit Banerjee, Director General, Confederation of Indian Industry, to give his welcome.
Madam Srimati Nirmala Sitharamanji, the Honorable Minister of Finance and Corporate Affairs of the Government of India, His Excellency Mr. Limpo Leki Dorji, the Honorable Minister of Finance of the Royal Government of Bhutan, His Excellency Mr. Musa Zamir, the Honorable Minister of Finance of the Republic of Maldives. We have with us Shri Tuhin Kanta Panda, the Finance Secretary DIPAM, and of the Government of India, and of course we have Mr. Ajay Seth in the audience, Secretary Revenue and DEA, Mr. Manoj Govil, expected to join as Secretary Expenditure, and a large number of government officials from the Ministry of Finance and other ministries, as well as, of course, the Indian and the global business and the policy-making community. So this is a great gathering that we have. Mr. Sanjeev Puri, the President of CII, and Mr. R. Dinesh, who has been spearheading this particular Global Economic Policy Forum from the business side. And I must also underline and mention that this Global Economic Policy Forum was initiated last year. And when it got initiated, we had approached Madam Finance Minister to give us her leadership and be the chair. And she accepted that request and said that this can become an important economic forum for the world in India. And we have started, ma'am. Thank you very much for your leadership. Thank you very much for giving us this huge visionary idea. A very warm welcome to you and to all our ministers. And we are thankful to each one of you for being here with us today. And as you know, in the middle of the budget session for the finance minister to take out time and to be with us is indeed exemplary. A special welcome to our two ministers from overseas, from Bhutan as well as from Maldives, to be joining us at the inaugural session. The theme that was selected for this year's forum is Decadal Priorities for the Global Economy, and the discussions will focus, a part of it was shown in the film, on economic growth, resilience, global cooperation, inclusion, sustainability, and the track on technology and innovation has become a very strong addition. So over the 2 days, today and tomorrow, we will have 23 odd sessions covering the topics that we just mentioned, and would be addressed by many of our senior ministers and over 100 odd speakers globally. So there are 100 global speakers coming in to this, and we will have 25 international speakers and 26 different government secretaries from India and regulators talking to us with their insights and their thoughts. I thought that we'll just mention it, and our economic strategy of investment-led growth, which is talked about with a lot globally about how we have been growing, our growth trajectory. All of that would be in rich discussions over the day today and tomorrow. So, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, honorable ministers, we look forward to your ideas, your thoughts, and we look forward to a very strong participation from all of you that have come here. 2,000 plus delegates that would be there. We have multiple halls, so we will accommodate everyone well, is what we wish. And once again, warm welcome, and thank you very much for being with us for the second edition of this very, very crucial and important global forum. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, may I now invite Mr. Sanjeev Puri, the President of CII, to give the business and Indian industry perspective, please.
Honorable Finance Minister of India, Srimati Nirmala Sitharamanji, His Excellency Mr. Laipo Leki Dorji, Honorable Minister of Finance, the Royal Government of Bhutan, His Excellency Mr. Moza Zamir, Honorable Minister of Finance, Republic of Maldives, Mr. Tuhin Kande Pandey, my colleagues from CII, Dinesh and Chanjudit, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. May I also add my welcome to all of you to this very important forum. It is a privilege to be part of the strategic deliberations on the decadal priorities for the global economy. Thank you, Honorable Finance Minister, for being here with us today, despite your very, very busy schedule. Your visionary interventions over the past few years have truly transformed the Indian economy into a beacon of hope amidst a sluggish global environment. In fact, some of your path-breaking initiatives offer templates for rapid growth across the world. Under your leadership, we look forward to building this forum as a guiding light for the global economic policy with due focus on the issues of emerging economies. Based on India's rapid growth, there are several lessons that emerge, which I thought I will put across as case studies or lessons that could be leveraged for in countries where rapid growth is being looked at. First, India is the 5th largest economy and very much on its way to becoming the 3rd largest in the world. The country accounts for 16% of the global growth, and this is likely to increase given the continued rapid growth of the Indian economy. Purposeful policy support over the years have resulted in India's stellar progress, which has been inclusive and sustainable. These policies and reforms, together with very robust execution mechanisms, are driving inclusive and sustainable growth, providing a template for many countries aspiring for rapid growth. Second, India is one of the few countries in the world that has walked the talk on climate action and climate commitments. India achieved 2 of its nationally determined contributions committed in 2015 on reducing emission intensity and creating non-fossil fuel-based energy capacity 7 years in advance. Given the scale of the development and the rapid progress on climate commitments, India's growth model would be very unique, characterized by low carbon growth pathways. It is obvious that a sustainable future cannot go without a sustainable lifestyle. And in this context, I thought I will mention India's pioneering initiative called Lifestyle for Sustainable Environment, which embodies the principles of sustainable lifestyle. These are templates for the developing world, not only for the developing worlds, but for the entire world to adopt. Third, India provides successful models for inclusive growth at scale. Over the last 10 years, India has pursued a saturation approach in reaching basic services to all its citizens, which include health, education, electricity, housing, food, digital services, financial inclusion, water, and sanitation. These initiatives have had great success in improving the lives of millions of its people, and many of these programs have unparalleled scale. For example, Ayushman Bharat is the world's largest publicly funded health insurance scheme. Some time back, very bold steps were taken to boost investments in public infrastructure. Under the leadership of the Honorable Finance Minister, as a result, India has witnessed unprecedented scale and quality of urban and rural infrastructure, mobility and connectivity, and social infrastructure, besides crowding in private investment. The impact on the economy has been multifaceted and has significantly reduced the cost of doing business and improving ease of living. India's climate-resilient infrastructure guidelines and framework for planning, design, and monitoring have enabled such impactful outcomes at scale. Fifth, India has leveraged digitization effectively in many spheres. Its digital public infrastructure, based on open architecture, is a shining example of how public-private partnerships can help deliver digital services to all citizens. Digitization is being used to strengthen ease of doing business with interventions like the National Single Window System and the India Industrial Bank Initiative. The agri-digital stack is set to revolutionize the Indian agriculture sector. The open network for digital commerce will provide global access to all businesses, big and small. The unified lending interface is expected to transform credit delivery, much like the unified payment system transformed the payments. UPI itself is one of the world's largest payment systems. The digital infrastructure empowers the economy by promoting financial inclusion, enhancing service delivery efficiency, reducing transaction costs, and creating a platform for innovation and potentially contributing to a substantial increase in GDP. These initiatives are replicable, and consequently, many countries have shown great interest in adopting these. Sixth, India is progressively playing a role in building global supply chain resilience. The rule of law, institutionally governed structures, and a forward-looking, industry-friendly policy environment make India a trusted partner and a favorable investment destination. In addition to offering competitive business environment, it also offers a large domestic market. Due to its demographic dividend, India can be a source at scale for both manufacturing and services, not only for the domestic market, but for the world at large. The noteworthy progress in electronics, semiconductor, solar panel industries are just some examples, and so is also the very rapid increase in the global capability centers in India are just some examples. India can thus emerge as a formidable partner for rebalancing global supply chains. Ladies and gentlemen, as we navigate an increasingly interconnected world, India's role as a partner in progress and a leader in innovation offers hope and inspiration. We look forward to sharing the Indian perspective at this forum and learning from global experiences. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Sanjeev. You have really gone into detail as to how industry and businesses have benefited from some of the best of economic policies that we have seen over the last few years. The entire world has appreciated the steering of our economy so very deftly in the last few years, in spite of many global challenges that we have faced, the headwinds that have come along. But we have seen India stand tall with its deft economic handling. And the Honorable Finance Minister has been, if one can say, most gracious whenever policy recommendations have been put up to her and brought up to her in terms of considering them and seeing how it can benefit each and every section of the society and, of course, create greater momentum to India and led us so very effectively over the last many years. With that, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming and requesting the Honorable Finance Minister, our Chief Guest and Chairman of the session, to please address us.
Good morning, and I'm happy to be here in the second edition of what is now becoming a good platform, largely for the Global South to meet, to exchange ideas, and to see how the global economy can be an effective instrument of bettering people and their lives. So let me start with thanking CII, Sanjeev Puri, Dinesh, Chandrajit Banerjee, and today on the dais is the Finance Secretary, Tuhin Pandey. But very importantly, I'd like to extend on behalf of CII and on behalf of Government of India, a warmest welcome to our very gracious ministers, His Excellency Minister Dorji from Bhutan and His Excellency Minister Musa Zamir from Maldives. We are grateful that you found time to participate and come and share your thoughts with us in this forum. And I look at this event as one of the major, I think I've said this earlier once before, this is a major platform through which the voice of the industry, voice of commerce, voice of concern from domain experts which come through is heard and we greatly rely on the inputs that I get from here. So thank you for continuing with it for the second time, and I wish that this event becomes a major platform for hearing the concerns on economy from the global south, and also has in the audience and as participants eminent representatives from the developed economies, because the world can no longer be divided in these kind of very comfortable zones of globally advanced and globally not so advanced, or then looking at factors of production which are under severe stress. So today, let me start by appreciating the CII for taking up a topic, I think, which is just the relevant one for today, the decadal priorities for global economy. We may be talking about it in different fora and with different emphasis given, but today, when we talk together, each one of us from our own perspective, we understand what the world needs to do immediately. And that is going to be critical for our lives on several aspects. So I'll just put my thoughts across today and not get into any data at all, but only flag issues of concern where industry together with policymakers, strategic leadership together with citizens' forums will all have to work on those larger goals. Otherwise, the decade would be frittered away. We can't even restore or claw back where we were before the COVID. But what we need to do is not just go back to where we were before COVID, but claw back more so that we are able to enter into this century with a lot more. We are already into it, 2 decades have passed, but enter into the middle of the century with a lot more strength. So broadly, I would think, first of all, the attempt both of industry and governments everywhere should be to restore some global calm, restore some normalcy. No way can there be enough justifiable reason for skirmishes or war. So the first effort, I think, the global priority for this decade should be restore normalcy. Talk, sit and discuss. War should be avoided. Disruption should be avoided. They are the main cause for supply chain disruptions. They are the main cause for disruptions in food value chains. And also, when you look at it, inflation globally is a big challenge. But inflation, as you know, doesn't respect borders. Inflation is so contagious that nowhere is any country's effort today is completely successful, because beyond its powers are inflation forces which come in. And therefore, the primary cause, I would think, is the disruption, the skirmish, the war, and as a result, world is facing a challenge which is reflected in very many ways in our economies. So I would think it's incumbent upon all of us, industry, government, policymakers, citizens and citizens forum, to tirelessly try to have some normalcy. Second is the oft-discussed problem, which Sanjeev Puri also referred to, supply chain disruption. The world tasted success of spreading supply chains on the principles of efficiency rules, scale rules, so Adam Smith rules, and therefore we located such production centers or hubs where it was economically making sense. But today, would there be anyone in the audience who will disagree if I say just economics doesn't prevail? Just the economics doesn't prevail, strategy prevails, politics prevails. So even if it made supply chain, if it made economic sense to concentrate production of certain particular commodities or goods or even services in some pockets, and derive the benefit of such a concentration. Today, the concentration risk is playing out in so many different ways, not because of economic sense or economic not making sense. It's more on politics. It's more on strategy. And therefore, today, economy will have to keep in mind, or consideration, commercial considerations, or economics, whether it is scale-based economics, will all have to look at blending economy and its priorities, also with politics and with strategic needs. So when you talk of supply chains, when you talk of wanting to restore supply chains to some kind of ease, frictionless supply chains, let's not forget that it is just not economics, it's more than that. What is all that we are talking about when we want to de-risk ourselves, when we want to remove from certain concentrations +1, +2? What are these theories? They didn't emerge out of inefficiency of economics. They emerged out of economy being influenced, economic principles being influenced by political principles. And therefore, I think somewhere we have to inbuild in our own decision-making just not economic sense, but also political and strategic sense. Supply chains will have to be restored, but you would reset it, you would realign it, you would make sure that they are spread so much that no political or geopolitical or strategic risks will threaten our well-being. And why do I say well-being here suddenly? It's because unless economies lift themselves and lift their people from such mores that we see, particularly in the global south, we cannot speak of any right, human rights or anything emerge out of economic well-being. And only then the other political rights and other things fall in place. If basic needs are not met of human beings, we are not in a position to speak, or we do not have a right to speak about political and other rights. So I think supply chains, lessons that we've learned in the last few years, in the last decade, should tell us that we have to now realign ourselves. Industry will have to realign itself, not just on economic principles. Third is the climate change, again something which Sanjeev Puri rightly spoke about. Climate is becoming a big issue, and here it is not just who's getting affected worse by one or the other. I think climate change has hit all of us in very many different ways. But what are more than the climate challenge itself, is the challenge of finding resources to meet those challenges. A lot of discussions happen, a lot of promises are made on the table, but nothing is realized as much as was spoken. So climate change is something for all of us to commit ourselves, like the intensity with which we commit for removal of poverty. I'm sure most of us in every country, advanced or developing or emerging, commitment to removal of poverty, commitment to working together with our poor at different levels and different scales is a commitment which all of us are living with and wanting to perform on. So equally, I would think it's important that on climate, we commit ourselves to make sure our people don't lose their hard-earned wealth, hard-earned small assets, their lives to climate vagaries. Extreme weather events are taking away hard-earned resources of the poor people. Are we giving them resilient infrastructure? Are we giving them a livelihood which they can quickly restore after a major event? Are we giving them such insurance, let us say, to take care of such economic disaster which may fall on them? So I think climate challenges will have to be looked at from various different perspectives rather than just emission. Yes, emission is an indicator. It's a diagnostic tool. But after that, how do we sort the problem out? Who puts the money in? Do we wait for a collective resource to reach us? Or is it that some of us will start doing our little bit for our own countries? Waiting for something which is going to come will lose the advantage, will make us lose the advantage of a number of years where we have not acted. We wouldn't have acted and therefore we lost. We will tend to lose the advantage that we have. And the next one on the decadal priorities, I would think, is agriculture and allied activities, where you need a lot more innovations, where you need a lot more technology application, and also making sure that these are applied in such a way that the farmers and those who are engaged in agri-related activities have a better livelihood, and at the same time, we ensure the food security of the world. So we need to look at agriculture practices, each within its own context. Water-thirsty crops should be replaced by others which are coarse grains, but yet the protein requirement of the world will also have to be addressed. So agriculture shouldn't be looked at in the same fashion that we've looked at it all these years, centuries. But today we have to look at various different ways. Your picture very clearly showed at the beginning the various forms in which we are reforming agriculture without depending on very scarce resources, just like water and so on. But at the same time, rapidity with which we engage in bringing novel and innovative ways for agriculture and allied activities is also a very strong instrument for security and also containing supply side and inflationary pressure on agricultural commodities. It is absolutely important. Similarly is the issue of handling water. Not every country is blessed with abundant supply of fresh water. But how are we going to handle this challenge, because it's getting scarcer even by the years? So that will be a decadal priority, I would think. Industrial reset is something which I've already spoken about. Industry will have to look at ways in which it can adapt to the newer challenges which are happening. And in that, as a next point, I would like to say, scale cannot be just the criteria. Large and larger corporations are welcome because they give you the advantage of scale. But I would also think scale together with spread. And when I say spread, there are countries like India who have always had the strength of the smaller and medium-sized enterprises. We need to have a blend of large for the scale and small for a horizontal scale. And when I say horizontal scale, you cannot have one unit established in one place and producing with efficiencies of scale. But they can only generate a certain number of jobs. When you spread it across, and there are many more medium and small size units everywhere, each one doing their own. Of course, the country should ensure quality is established. Many other efficiencies which come with technology are also brought into them. Unless enterprises spread across the length and breadth of any country, particularly for large countries like India, particularly for large countries with population of the youth now in our favor, unless we spread across and unless we have the advantage of scale in that sense, that you spread it across the country and give that energy for the micro, small, and medium enterprises, you're just not going to reap the benefit for your demographic dividend, which is waiting to be fully realized. So I would suggest for the decadal priority, industry should work together with small and medium units to see how they can be supportive of the large unit equally as much as they supporting job creation. So today the problem is not economic success, which is just production, but it is also economic success, which can spread benefits for those who are waiting for jobs and wages. So that, I would think, will be facilitated, will be made easy through technology. Sanjeev Puri, again, referring to him again, spoke about how India's DPI, digital payment interface, India's technology-driven ONDC, the Open Network for Digital Commerce, and India's technology stack for agriculture have all brought in at one go the advantage to democratize access. Farmers are able to today access global markets. You're able to give them the advantage of technology, which instantly gives them the benefit of information about the soil condition, about the intensity of crop output, about how a weather situation can affect him, or how we can prevent damage. So that agri-stack, which is, I'm sure, going to be the next big thing that you hear from India. You heard about the digital payment interface. The agri-stack is the next big thing from India, technology-driven, which is going to take care of agriculture and allied activities. So the same technology bridge is what I would strongly suggest as a facilitator for scaling up in largeness and scaling across, which will share the benefit for all the youth who are located in different areas, but who do not have access to resources or to opportunities. So technology it is going to be. And similarly, when I talked about access and opportunities for the youth, it is that technology, the digital learning instruments that you can bring in. India's brought in digital university. We're trying to give extension training for youth in different far-flung areas through technology. Industry today, I'll call upon you. You should work together, not just with the Indian government, but with governments across the world. If you are looking for trained and skilled manpower at various levels that you may need them, unless you are going to work with the governments to have them be trained in such skill sets which you require, it is going to be difficult for industry to say, I need manpower, but I don't get the right kind. You can't sit and ask somebody to provide that for you. I would strongly call upon industry to work together on a priority to ensure use the technology, use digital instruments to make sure youth who get out of universities are trained in such a fashion that they are available for you when you want the manpower. So I would think that should be a decadal priority for industry as much for governments. And the final point that I'd like to put as a point of priority for the decade, as much for you, more for the government, is debt and financial security. Intergenerational debt is mounting on countries. Responsible economies, and I speak for the industry and for government, responsible economies can't be run with borrowings so large that the next generation and generation after that already knows what it is liable to repay. That after all will have to be passed through as taxation. You're not going to be able to generate that resource to pay back the debt that you've taken. So I would think it is absolutely important for governments and for industry to work together to say how best debt can be managed at the national, and I hate using this word, but I would say at the subnational level. I mean the federal and the provincial level. It is important for us to manage our debt. COVID brought us to such a situation where, well, whether you liked it or not, you had to borrow. And I'm not saying that we remained outside of borrowing. We also borrowed. But we are super conscious about the fact that we cannot burden our forthcoming generations with debt that is not sustainable. Yes, debt is required. But we need to be, in this coming decade, I think the priority should be to manage your finances and borrow, yes, borrow for building assets, borrow for managing better, but it cannot be such borrowing that you leave the next coming generations worried about how they can service it. And financial security is something also which is important, and I'm sure you recognize how nations today are worried, and multilateral development institutions are not yet ready to cope with the modern requirements, post-COVID requirements of countries, particularly in managing their financial situation. India, during its G20 presidency, made sure that we gave a recommendation with the international expert group that we constituted for the reform of multilateral financial institutions, because they should rise timely to help countries that need that kind of a finance and also assistance in time. Otherwise, economies are going to be severely challenged. So without taking more of your time, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I've just shared some thoughts, but these are, I suppose, going to be very important for the coming decade. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Honorable Finance Minister, for indeed such a visionary address to the world, if I may say, to the global south and for India and for the Indian business leaders in all our policy discussions. From your address today will flow the several sessions, and I'm sure that each and every session will deliberate and discuss and take forward the thoughts and ideas that you have given to us this morning. We indeed appreciate yours covering each and every topic that was listed in the main ideas that are to be discussed in this forum this year. Once again, a very warm thanks and a very, very sincere gratitude to you for sparing your time in giving us this huge start that this forum needed. With that, I would request Mr. R. Dinesh. Dinesh has been leading from the CII side the structures, etc., from regarding the summit, to quickly wrap up on the way forward from what we pick up from the Honorable Finance Minister's speech today.
Thank you, CB. Honorable Minister of Finance and Corporate Affairs, Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman ji, Honorable Minister of Finance of Bhutan, Honorable Minister of the Republic of Maldives, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. As we come to the close of the inaugural plenary, I think we take away a message which is very, very clear. So thank you, Honorable Finance Minister, for laying out the clear potential which the next 10 years hold, but what we as participants in this growth journey will have to do to make that happen. In a way, we are tasked with navigating the economic recovery in the aftermath of many global disruptions. The Honorable Finance Minister used the word restoring global calm, and that's something which all of us look forward to. The task goes beyond economic indicators. It includes building a world where opportunity is universal, innovation is used ethically, and progress respects the boundaries. As we conclude this inaugural session, I would like to extend my deepest gratitude to the Honorable Finance Minister, who took the lead and supported us when we met her last year. And as CB pointed out, we believe that this can become the event of the Global South, as you have mentioned, Madam, and we will work closely with you to make this happen going forward. Madam, your vision for India and the world and how we are going to engage has set us a clear path. We look forward to carrying forward the points which you have mentioned, and we will definitely come out with an outcome paper post this event and see what we can implement together in the year ahead. I would like to again thank you for your visionary leadership, and we look forward to working with you to make this much more successful. I would like to thank His Excellency, the Honorable Minister of Finance, Lekhi Dorje. I also thank His Excellency, the Honorable Minister of Finance of Musa Zamir. I would like to thank all those who have helped us in putting together this program, other than from the Government of India, and of course the CII staff who have made all this possible. I look forward to the deliberations in the next few days and look forward to the outcome paper which we will all release under your able leadership. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. We now would like to present a token of appreciation to to all our ministers. May I request Mr. Tuhin Kanta Pandey, Secretary Finance, to kindly hand over a token of appreciation to His Excellency Mr. Dorji, Honorable Finance Minister, the Royal Government of Bhutan, please. May I request him once again to kindly hand over a token of appreciation to His Excellency Mr. Musa Zamir, Honorable Minister of Finance, Republic of Maldives. And now I request our DG, Mr. Chandrajit Banerjee, to honor the Finance Minister of India, Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman, with a token of appreciation from us. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we close the inaugural session, and I'd like to thank all our dignitaries on the dais for their presence here and request all of them to please come forward and stand together for a photo opportunity. I request all of you to remain seated as our dignitaries leave the hall. Our next session in this hall is the 4 trends that will shape the global economy in the coming decade: AI and technology, demography, geopolitics, sustainability. This session will take place in this hall. We have a parallel session in the hall opposite this, Shah Jahan Hall, which is the future of regulation, balancing innovation and risk. For those of you who would like to attend Future of Regulation, Balancing Innovation and Risk, I request you to move to Shah Jahan Hall. And for the rest of you, request you to remain seated here. May I request those sitting at the back, you can move forward for this session because I wouldn't want the front seats to be empty. So please make yourselves comfortable. Give us 5 minutes to turn the stage around and we will start with the session right away. Ladies and gentlemen, we are ready to begin with our session now. I'm sure you've all done your bit of networking over coffee. I'd like to request all of you to please settle down so that we can invite our speakers on the dais to join us. Request all of you to please settle down. Ladies and gentlemen, requesting you to please settle down. And I'd like to invite on stage our speakers for the session. May I invite Mr. Nitendra Rajput, Senior Vice President and Head AI Garage MasterCard, Dr. Rohini Somanathan, Head of Economics Department, Delhi School of Economics, Mr. Michael Every, Global Strategist, Rabobank, Singapore, Dr. Ruchir Agarwal, Director, Raj Center, Columbia University and President, Global Talent Fund, USA, Mr. Rajiv Peshawria, CEO, Stewardship, Asia Center, Singapore, and President, Leadership Energy Consulting, USA. I once again request all of you to please settle down. Please sit down, everybody. We are about to begin with this session. Our speakers are all ready, and we will start the session with requesting Mr. R. Dinesh, immediate past President, Confederation of Indian Industry, and Executive Chairman, TVS Supply Chain Solutions Limited, to give his opening remarks and take the session forward. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Renuka. Good morning, everyone. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the session on the 4 trends that will shape the global economy for the next decade. The 4 points are artificial intelligence technology, the demography, geopolitics, and sustainability. And in fact, I was very happy that all of those points were mentioned in different ways by the Honorable Finance Minister in her opening comments as well. I think we have a set of distinguished experts who are here with us. With their permission, I'm not going to go into their bio. All of you would have had the background notes, so I'm sure you are aware of what expertise they bring to this session. I think all of us understand and agree that while these issues are present great opportunities, they also present in a way their set of challenges. And I think what I'm hoping to take away during this discussion is a set of potential outcomes or recommendations, as I mentioned in my opening remarks in the first session, which we, as part of this forum, can take forward, not just for future reference, but also look at how we can help shape the future using these data points. So I know I'm placing a burden on some of you by asking for these big takeaways, but I'm sure we will have more than enough coming out of this. So I would now not take too much time explaining why we picked these topics. I think there have been enough discussions on that score, and all of us and the audience, I'm sure, are aware as to the reasons and the outcomes which can be used out of these 4 topics. So I'm now going to move to my first speaker, and the format for this is going to be opening comments, then depending on the time, a few questions being asked, maybe I'll start, and then we'll throw it open to the floor for further questions to follow. So with that, can I now request Mr. Rajput, Senior Vice President and Head, AI Garage MasterCard, to start with his comments, please, first.
Thank you so much for introducing the topic, Mr. Dinesh, and really it's a great opportunity for us to be discussing this specifics around AI, but that too on the background of everyone around here coming from sustainability, coming from economics and so on. The challenge about talking with AI is that there is a lot of talk about it. And I think the first takeaway I would want all of us to realize, especially if we are talking about the trends, that too for a decade, which is a long time, not like 6 months and so on, is the fact that we need to go beyond the noise. You know, trends are usually strong and deep, which means if we want to identify a really strong trend, we should not focus on the little ripples or the waves. In the ocean, when we see these waves, we usually focus on those little waves. But a large wave like a tsunami actually comes from significantly large undercurrents. And there are very big experts who then realize that, okay, all these undercurrents will add up to this particular tsunami or this large wave, and that's how people surf those waves and so on. So when we are trying to identify trends in the space of artificial intelligence, it's important to go beyond the current noise of things with respect to, will AI take away my jobs, this chatbot stuff, the fact that people can create fake videos and so on and so forth. Those are the ripples, to be honest. The big trend in AI is the fact that it is bringing disciplines together, really. It is totally interdisciplinary in a societal manner. Today, when people talk about AI, not only they talk from the point of view of technology, they talk from the point of view of business, how it's going to impact the business. They talk with the regulators, is it fair, unfair, and so on. They talk with people who are deciding how the economy or how the society should actually take these and what is right, what is wrong, and so on. So all of these things are coming together. If some person who builds an AI technology uses data that is more biased and therefore maybe some specific demography of a person gets more loan than the others and so on, they can actually be sued. A technologist getting sued for the good code that they've written was not there earlier. So now they really need to know the impact of things that's going to happen. People who are law enforcement agencies or companies or agencies who decide on such laws, they are trying to understand the technology, what its implications are, so that they can make the right laws. Never had been done earlier, exactly. So what trend is happening is the fact that things are getting very interdisciplinary because of the fact that AI is so pervasive in nature. That's one important takeaway when we look at trends that are going to happen from AI. The second trend from the AI perspective is the fact that it is bringing in inclusivity to the real man. To every common person, the technology behind anything that we do, whether it is payments, whether it is buying something and so on, is now getting so pervasive that any common man can just talk to things and so on and therefore retrieve stuff in their own local languages. That's why breaking the barrier of access, it is happening now, which means everyone will be on the same platform more or less, which we had been talking for decades, but now this digital divide is actually going to collapse significantly. So any regulation, any business that we do, we need to realize with the fact that now there is an equivalent population existing there, which is going to be able to access our services and so on. The third thing when it comes to AI is the fact related to speed. You know, way back when the first train, passenger train, moved from Manchester to some place in the UK, I think, it was in 1830. So the train started from one place to the other, Manchester to, I forgot, maybe it's London. The train used to run, and then after about 12 years, they realized that the clocks are not synchronized. How would I know that 11 a.m. at this place is the same as 11 a.m. that place? So let's actually come up with a timetable. So after 18 years, the British rail companies came up with a timetable. And then they realized that timetable doesn't make sense because the clocks at both the places are not synced. So therefore, they figured out that maybe the clock needs to be synced, and that's how this whole thing about Greenwich Mean Time came 30 years after the trains actually had been moving. Things do not move at that pace now. Things move at a significantly faster pace. There are discussions about regulations on AI, there are discussions about what is fair, what is right, what is wrong in AI and so on, which now need to be taken at a significantly fast pace because we cannot wait for 30 years for a clock to be synchronized and then all the operations start to happen. So speed is increasing significantly. The bigger factor is that things are becoming interdisciplinary and the fact is that we are going to become a totally, and we are becoming a totally inclusive society. That is the backdrop that AI is actually drawing, which hopefully is going to lead us into all different kinds of solutions, policies, people, which we'll perhaps talk from here.
Thank you. And I think the ripples versus the trend, I think is a very important point we'll come back to in my questions later. Can I now move on to Dr. Rohini Somanathan for her comments, please?
Thank you, Dinesh, and thank you, CII, for giving me this opportunity. Given the time, I'll focus on two of the global trends that have been given to us, demography and sustainability. And in doing so, what I'd like to do is just make parallels and contrasts with other Asian countries in two groups. The first would be Japan, Korea, China, and Thailand. And the other would be the other four countries in Asia, including India, which is Vietnam, India, Indonesia, and the Philippines. And I think we have much to learn from these contrasts. Before going into the detail of what I want to say, I just want to say that I think this initiative is potentially very, very valuable. Because there's something special about firms in India. There's something special about the corporate sector in India. One is, of course, that there is this corporate social responsibility. And it's been formalized now. But one thing that stands out to me over my many years here and abroad is its sort of unique commitment among business leaders to do something for society at large, rather than just look at the bottom line in terms of profits. And I think coming together, we have to think about how we can exploit that better. So, in terms of demography, some things in these two groups of countries have been very much the same. So what has happened is that we've gone from high fertility rates to low fertility rates. And all over Asia now, we're pretty much at replacement fertility. As the Honorable Finance Minister said, India is a big country and there's a lot of heterogeneity. But if we look at the aggregate, we're at a fertility rate of roughly 2. And this is true all over the place. If we look at life expectancy has been rising. It's risen very fast in China and in Japan, very, very fast. In Korea, very fast. China, a little bit less so. India, again, less so. And so what this has meant is that the Indian population is among the youngest in the world right now. But it's very temporary. We would like life expectancy to rise. And as life expectancy rises, we're going to think not of a demographic dividend, but of what Japan now calls the silver demographic dividend. So what we have to do is not only make the young population today more productive, we have to think about ways in which the older population can be productive. And so that's one big thing that is facing us over the next few decades. So in Japan, for example, the dependency ratio has gone from 10% in 1960, and it's projected to be 80% in 2050. So this is a big change. It's there. It's going to happen. And we want it to happen because we want people to live healthier. We want them to live longer, but then we have to accommodate that. We have to make sure we produce enough. And so how do we do that? So, well, if we're talking about the younger population being more productive, we have to think about the educational system. And this is where I think the public-private partnerships really matter. We have to think about ways in which private initiatives can come together with public universities. And there's a remarkable amount of investment in this actually in foreign universities. So many Indian industrialists have supported chairs, have supported centers abroad. We haven't had that engagement happening
in India. And I think part of it is a very controlled, regulated public system. So I think we have to think about how we can get flexibility into that system. How else do we get the young productive? We get more women into the labor force. Labor force participation rates in India are 27% for women, among the lowest in the world. So how can we get more women coming in? Given the norms that we operate under, they're not going to travel very far away. There's a certain amount of division in the household. They're joint families. How are we going to do this? And I think that's where corporate India has to partner with academics and think tanks and think about how to make that happen. In the couple of minutes that I have left, let me talk about the old, and then I'll talk about sustainability for a minute. So if I think about the silver dividend, we've done a lot in making insurance available. Government policies recently have expanded health insurance. What we haven't focused on is preventive care, which is much, much cheaper than hospitalization or medical care once you get sick. So I think we need to figure out ways in which we can do that. Again, I think what the Honorable Finance Minister was saying is partner with public institutions in small places rather than just in big centers. Finally, on sustainability, there's been a lot of talk about being vocal for local. And I think we need to think about how we can make the local more vocal. So not to think about distributive justice in terms of things going out to people who need them, but really about thinking of local communities as being a little more self-sufficient. So, for example, my pet peeve is with the public distribution system, which is a very important safety net. What we have is we have grain coming into the center and then grain going out to villages. If we had ways in which families who need food and lentils and other things can procure locally and be subsidized by the government rather than have this massive flow of goods, we would not only save on transport, we would get better quality food because people are buying locally, they're more accountable. Okay, so let's think about communities being more resilient and more self-sustaining, which is not to say that they don't benefit from technology that's available outside or economies of scale. But let's think about that a little bit and think about dividing what can be done locally and what's best done in centers. And there are a number of NGOs. You know, the other thing that stands out in India is just the energy of local NGOs in bringing people together. But they need the corporate houses to come in and help them. They need to help them market. They need to help them mechanize. There's a whole set of functions where I think corporate India can come together with village India. And the trick to sustainability really lies in that. Once we do that, I think the macro picture of what's happening with floods and climate and everything else lies in really those micro relations. So let's think more about how to get that going, and I'm happy to talk more during these 2 days to any of you who have ideas on this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Rohini. And I think I mentioned that there could be provocative ideas coming, and I think you have succeeded in at least giving 2 of them. One actually which would, in a way, destroy the thesis of the company which I represent, supply chain. So anyway, we will talk about that in more detail. And talking of somebody who is seen not just as providing new ideas, but also provocative ideas, we tried to have him here last year, but thankfully, I think we have you here for this session. Michael, over to you.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here. We're talking about 4 key topics here, obviously. We're talking about AI, technology, demography, geopolitics, and sustainability. And my simple argument is this: for this decade, and I believe the next couple of decades, the correct lens to look through to understand all of them is geopolitics. You have to start with that and then work on from there rather than starting with the others. Let me explain why. Let's look at technology, for example. We're talking about AI, or maybe AGI, artificial general intelligence, so intelligent machines. We're talking about quantum computing. We're talking about 3D printing. All of these things are going to be accelerants to wealth differentials and power differentials. Read any history book and you'll see with new technology, you get different power arrangements. The people who don't have them will be left behind. So we can't talk about them in isolation. Are they going to be used for goods or for weapons? Usually weapons, and then goods come afterwards. So let's just consider the realpolitik of this and the history of them. Are they going to boost productivity, or are they going to create mass unemployment? Open question. I don't have the answer, but we had to think about it. So that's technology. Demography. We've just heard some very important facts on that. If we look at the global picture, over the next decade, and again, the next few decades, many countries are going to see their labor populations, their labor force explode, mainly in the world's poorest countries and least well-governed. And we're going to see the world's richest countries see their working age populations collapse. Now, if you're an economist, or, no offense whatsoever, I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about the ones I often come across. You will say, well, we can rebalance supply and demand globally. No, you can't. These are not onions or tomatoes or apples. These are different countries, different cultures, different peoples. You can do it to a limited degree, and then voters in the importing countries say no, as they are doing over and over again, and the exporting countries say, why are we losing our best and our brightest? They need to be here to help develop us. So how do we resolve that? I'm not sure, but you need to start thinking about geopolitics to understand it. Then we move on to sustainability. Now, there are lots of different ways to think and talk about sustainability, but one of the crucial ones, of course, is the matter of energy. Well, energy is literally power, literally power. So how can it not be about geopolitics, again, if you're talking about who has the power to have cheap energy and who doesn't, who supplies it and who has to beg for it? If we haven't had that explained to us in the past couple of years post-Ukraine, I don't know what will. So as we're looking forward, just consider that we're in a world now where within weeks, the US is likely to shift back aggressively to fossil fuels. They're probably going to dump President Biden's green agenda and drill, baby, drill. What's Europe going to do about that, which is absolutely committed to this green transition and as a result is deindustrializing as well as demilitarizing? So is that really a sustainable solution for Europe? I'm not sure, but they have to try and cross that bridge somehow. And they're saying they want to collaborate and cooperate on the green transition, and then they put up tariffs on Chinese EVs and Chinese solar panels. So what's the message here? I'm not quite sure anyone fully understands. And China, they, of course, have a very powerful green technology production factor. They're also the world's largest polluter in terms of carbon and a huge increase in coal every single year. Let's be blunt. China has wonderful green technology and they developed it for national security reasons so they don't have to worry about importing as much oil, which the Americans can blockade in case of a war. That's one of the key reasons why they did it, not for the good of mankind. I'm glad they did, but it's geopolitics that drove that. So when you put all these together into the mix, what can you do? Well, I think you have to think about things like this. You can't look at each individual factor alone and say, what's the correct policy, economic policy for technology? What's the correct economic policy for demography or for sustainability? You have to start with economic statecraft, where all policies are joined together, integrated, understanding what all the other ones are doing in tandem for a national goal. Now, of course, if you do that, it is, of course, zero sum to a degree. And a long-running point I've been making now is that the 2020s, unfortunately, echo partly the 1920s in terms of our collapsing global liberal order and uncertainty and, you know, some unsavory characters emerging in the background, which we just have to live with. There's a lot of downside to that, a lot of downside. But there's also a lot of upside, because when you start asking questions to yourself, like, what is GDP for? Not what is GDP. What the bloody hell are we doing this for? I don't want to hear it's 2.1 or 2.2 or 7.5 or 7.4. What's the target as a society, as a nation, as a planet, if we want to think in the big picture? What are we trying to achieve? And if we understand that, it's not too hard, actually, to then start lining up those policies. And that is what statecraft is all about. Now, let's be honest, is everyone going to come on board and sing from the same hymn sheet? Never in a million years. Welcome to the human condition. but can you get a constellation or a conflation of countries or blocks that could work together cooperatively within that particular environment? I think you could, and that's a certain element of sustainability that can address technology and can address demography as well, potentially. But the long and the short of it is this: if we don't do that, if we continue to look at each policy in isolation, and most importantly, if we keep pretending geopolitics is one word alone that we can just sprinkle into conversations and sound pseudo-sophisticated while doing it, without actually understanding that's the primary driver of everything in a rather atavistic sense, we're not going to get anywhere. So, you want to be provocative? I think you've got it there, but I'll finish a bit early. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. I think, yes, interesting thoughts, but I think I will come to the questions, but I'm just warning you that the question which definitely will come. These seem to be cycles, right, which keep coming back, and with every evolution in technology, as was pointed out. So I think it'll be good to get what you think is that economic statecraft which generations have missed. Because if the future generation is going to address it, we need to think how do we go about doing that. With that, can I now move to Dr. Agarwal for his comments?
Good morning, everybody. So I hope everyone's awake. So I also have been advised to be provocative, and I'm going to try to do that in my time. Let me start. So the question is, how will these four factors reshape the global economy, not just in this decade, but decades to come? So let's start with demographics. I very much believe that probably in 5 years or so, that will be the key topic, the key single theme by which the world will be understanding global challenges. And so just to give you a sense of what I'm talking about, today about 2/3 of the people in the world live in countries where the population is below replacement rate. So if, as Rohini talked about it, so if a state like Maharashtra, where the fertility rate, that's the number of children an average woman is having, is about 1.6, means in 2 generations, the classes will be 25% smaller. Places like Sikkim, where that number is 1, you're going to see 75% of the population cohorts disappear in 2 generations. So all the problems we talk about, many of the problems we talk about today, say climate change, youth unemployment, will be yesterday's problem, in my view, are already getting to be yesterday's problem. And so, and this is a huge implication for businesses. So until 5 years ago or so, about 15 million people in India were added to the working age population. Today it's 10. By 2040, it'll be 0. So we are people think India has a demographic dividend, and if you come to my lecture at 4:30 p.m. in the other hall, which is titled Humanity Without Humans, I'll talk more about that. So that's kind of point 1. Now, point 2 on sustainability. I've already argued now that we are probably placing, as a species, way too much emphasis on climate change. I personally am not so worried about the 1.5, 2 degree warming. In fact, this year may very well be the year where the peak of the flow of carbon emissions peak. Okay, so the per capita emissions is falling, and the population growth is slowing. So this may be the worst year in terms of how much sins we commit with respect to the climate. Of course, climate is a stock problem, not a flow problem. But I think where we should be focusing on sustainability is actually thinking about catastrophic risks. What I'm more worried about is, because of the way these climate feedbacks work, today the climatologists cannot preclude the possibility of a 5 degree Celsius warming by the end of the century. Now, those risks are really huge for humanity. So we ought to be working more on geoengineering solutions, like shooting up billions tiny particles into space to instantly cool the Earth. And there are a lot of opportunities for businesses and governments to partner and actually do it in a safe way. So I think that's where I would, and lastly I would say, when we take sustainability, unfortunately, people are not very imaginative so far, and they talk about sustainability equals climate. But we need, as a species, as we evolve, and also look to our own ancient Indian traditions, say from Hinduism to Buddhism to Jainism. We also care about other species, and we will hopefully care more about other species. So who our stakeholders are may not just be the poor, as was talked about by Nitendra earlier, but may also be the other creatures, and then what role we have to play in preserving biodiversity. I would encourage us to think about that, and there's a lot of opportunities there. Let me move to AI. The one way I think about the way AI will reshape everything, and this is thanks to a friend of mine, Tom Cunningham, is all private information will become public information. And so in many ways, what these models are doing, and the generative AI models, is just training on stuff in the public domain and making it accessible to all of us. Now, as I see it, the real question is there are two different views of AI. And so one is, the way to go is, are we combining existing human ideas to create new ideas? Or will we be able to develop the artificial intelligence technologies in a way that we will create new ideas beyond existing human ideas? So the way I think about that is, take the Latin alphabet, say, or what we use in English, say A to Z, or A to Z, as we say in India. One way of thinking about AI is we're just combining these letters in new ways to create new words. That's kind of view A. And in that case, the world will change, but not that much. But view B is, maybe there will be new letters itself introduced to give us many more things to combine. And if that's true, and which I'm more favorable to view B, then we will have massive, huge discrete changes. And so one example, a friend of mine, Michael Fabinger, has shared with us at Columbia University earlier this year at the Raj Center, was like, you can imagine we could have greenfield cities. You know, a lot of people in Delhi here are subject to terrible pollution, and it's definitely going to have large impacts on our life expectancy. But I was thinking, you know, why don't we create a new city? You know, you need access to clean water. And those are the type of ideas that can be much more easy to implement in a few years. You know, you won't need many Uber drivers. You can have self-driving cars. A lot of technologies today will enable us to do things that we could not imagine before, and that the limit will be our creativity and imagination. Then moving to the last one is geopolitics. I do think, as Michael mentioned, that is a serious risk. And the way I think about that is that, you know, okay, so as Minister said earlier, that we should not think about trade just from an economics perspective, but from a strategic perspective. Now, that still can be thought about it as a diversification, which is that you're just diversifying your supply chain. And so there is reason to bring strategy beyond going to the lowest cost supplier. However, many countries today have gone beyond that and have used national security as a reason to do protectionist and often very harmful policies. And so I think we have to be very careful to not call something A, but actually do B, okay? And so, and here, I think there's a huge opportunity now for India. I just met somebody this morning who is coming from the US to look for new suppliers because they're trying to reshape the supply chain from China. And he said, look, with 25% tariff on China, many businesses become more attractive to us in India than China. Now, if you have a 10 percentage point additional tariff, I think things can change dramatically, and there's a huge scope. But I would just end on saying, at the end of the day, on geopolitics, it'll be really bad for the world if we all collectively work as 2 or 3 separate groups of humans instead of as one species. And so a big risk for us is not just separately design, you know, parallel technologies, but we all work together. And I would say 99% of us genetically, we are chimpanzees. And, you know, that 1% difference has given us religion, has given us AI, has given us CII. And the question is for us, how can we use that? Have we evolved enough as humans to still come together to overcome the challenges, the small challenges, I would say, of geopolitics, and still do what's needed to address the biggest challenges that will face our species. So thank you very much.
Thank you for covering comprehensively all the 4 points. We will come back to you, I'm sure, with questions from the audience as well. So last but the most important, if I can say so, Rajeev Peshwaria covering, please.
Good morning. Imagine an entrepreneur using AI to produce and deploy deadly autonomous weapons which are capable of both precision attacks to hunt down individuals and mass destruction 100 times as powerful as Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The technology significantly strengthens the country's safety and allows its forces to protect its country, its borders, and fight without putting boots on the ground. Is this wrong? Is it illegal? Is it patriotic to do so? Think about that for a second. Now imagine another entrepreneur using AI and gamification to entice young people to trade more stocks and securities, making the app absolutely addictive. Many young people get hooked on the app and trade again and again, and the company makes huge profits. Is it wrong? Is it illegal? Think about it. Let me tell you what those were. The first example was Inaugural Industries, a gentleman, a 32-year-old gentleman called Lucky Palmer, who's becoming the most important thing in war and defense in the United States, giving run for the money to companies like Raytheon, etc. He chooses to use his AI genius for weapons of mass destruction rather than protecting humanity. And the second one is Robin Hood. Robin Hood has caused, because of that addiction, huge amounts of financial distress to young people, including a recent suicide where he called the helpline saying, "I need help," and no human being answered. That's AI for you. My friends, what I'm trying to say is if we want AI to make life better for us rather than worse, we need EI before AI. What is EI? Ethical integrity. Not just integrity, ethical integrity. Integrity to most people is, I didn't do anything wrong. It's not illegal. But not doing wrong does not mean doing right. It's upon us as humans to use that 0.1% difference from chimpanzees, as was just mentioned, to use our judgment, ethical integrity. That's on EI. Now on sustainability. How many Earths do we need to cater to current levels of human consumption? Does anybody know? The answer is 1.7 Earths. Last I checked the dictionary, the encyclopedia or wherever, the solar system, there's only one Earth. By 2030, we will need 2 full Earths to feed us. Okay? Until recently, here's a very alarming piece of data for you. Until recently, the rate of species extinction was about 5 species per year. Until a few years ago, about 5 species would disappear from the Earth every year. Do you know how many times more than the normal rate it is today? Are you ready to fall off your chairs? It's 10,000 times the normal rate. Species extinction. One of the things that might go extinct is bees, and I don't need to tell this august audience what would happen if bees would go extinct. Extreme weather events, a lot of people have talked about. Severe heat waves, disastrous floods are on the rise, causing many, many billion-dollar damage events. And yet some people deny the existence of climate change. So here's the issue. Even though there are about $40 trillion in so-called ESG funds, increasing regulation all around the world, and a plethora of green incentives, why are we going in the opposite direction? What is the answer? 69, get this, ladies and gentlemen, 69 of the top 100 global economies in the world are not countries, they are companies. Yes, you heard that right. If we are to save the world, we need businesses to step up. But asking businesses to compromise or to sacrifice some profits for purpose is a futile exercise. We need profitable solutions to today's existential challenges. And the World Economic Forum, I serve on one of their councils, says that There are $10.1 trillion a year. A year means annual new business opportunities provided by climate change alone, and that can produce 395 million new jobs by 2030. We need to change the narrative of sustainability from a cost, compliance, or risk problem to an opportunity, because money is to be made. As Tom Friedman says, the only thing bigger than Mother Nature is Father Greed. So we have to find profitable solutions, and we can. Again, we'll need to tap into that 0.1% of the difference between us and chimpanzees if we are going to do that, and that only humans can do. Finally, on demography. So we look at birth rates and death rates and age spans in demography, but I want to point to a third issue, and that is inequality. We need to address inequality for our own good. 1% of the richest people in the world are twice as rich as the remaining 99% of us. Think about that. And here's my favorite one. A handful of rich men in this world have more wealth than all the women of Africa put together, and that is 600 million women. And you know how many men have more wealth than all the women of Africa? Only 22 men. So talk about inequality. While the recent murder of the United Healthcare CEO must be condemned and punished in the strongest possible way, because violence is not the answer, sadly, that event, that horrific event, is a stark reminder to us about the dangers of inequality. Fortunately, our research at the Stewardship Asia Center says that companies and businesses that operate on the principle of interdependence. Interdependence means my success is interdependent with yours and vice versa, and the more I give, the more I receive. Their businesses last longer, more than 100 years. Otherwise, the average span of a business these days is 18 years. So we can do this, and we can do this profitably. In other words, businesses should aim to maximize profits because that is their work. But to do so, they must maximize purpose first. And that requires a new leadership model, which we have researched after talking to about 500 companies that are actually doing well by doing good. And that is the steward leadership model, which aims to create a collective better future. Keyword is collective better future for stakeholders, society, future generations, and the environment. And our data actually corroborates the fact that the companies that run with steward leadership principles live longer and are more healthier and more profitable. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to close with this last thing for you to remember. The mantra for 21st century business, rather let me start with, the challenge of 21st century business is to do well by doing good, to make money by addressing the very challenges that humanity is facing today. And the mantra that we need to follow is maximum purpose, maximum profit. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rajiv. Again, very provocative from a thought perspective, but we will come back to the implementation side of it. So I think we are well in time for questions. So I'm going to start with one question and then throw it open to the audience. Depending on the interest, we will carry on from there. So I'm just going to go back to what I mentioned, Michael, and I think I would like to hear everybody in the panel views on all of us violently agree that we have to do good, we have to be profitable, we have to do what is best, not just for now, but for the future. But why are we not able to get even an iota of that implemented across the board? So what is the real solution for economic statecraft to be successful? Michael, you want to start? And then
I'll try and give a very brief answer to a very, very big question, because I spend a lot of my life thinking about that. The short answer, and I'll give a slightly longer one in a second, is that if you are going to, my personal view, and others may disagree, is that when you expect businesses and private individuals, etc., to do anything other than look for what's cheapest, in multiple dimensions, you will fail. It won't work. When you try and put in place market mechanisms, they'll find ways to work around them. They'll try and rig them. It's only when people are genuinely afraid that they start changing actions. And that's why, even though I'm no great militarist whatsoever, to make that abundantly clear, I think that when the national security threat or that flag is played, that's when everyone suddenly starts realizing, okay, I can't trade with them anymore. Okay, I can't do that. Okay, we have to diversify our supply chain. Okay, I have to have 3 expensive fallback options rather than just centralizing on one. My profits go down, but at least I know I'm safe if one of them gets bombed. People simply won't do it until they're terrified. You can try and win it over, with a moral argument, but I don't think it works. And the slightly longer version of that, just 60 more seconds, is this. I was talking to Rohini earlier, and I said that most contemporary economists who work in banks, for example, who are there just to tell you to buy stocks or houses, rather than actually doing any research, they've never read any of the great economic thinkers. And if you read some of the greats like Schumpeter, for example, some of you will be familiar with his name, that's normally reduced to bullet points by contemporary economists. They'll say creative destruction. And some of you in the audience might be familiar with that. Well, Schumpeter wrote works from the floor to the ceiling. He was a genius, multi-dimensional genius. And he was a free marketeer his entire life, always saying deregulate, 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 because government control is poison and toxin and ends up with corruption and distortion and immorality. And at the end of his life, he actually recanted completely, because he realized, he said, free markets don't work unless you have morality. And you can't legislate for morality, but equally a free market won't create it either. So in America a few years ago, there was a fashion where people used to wear these bracelets that said, "What would Jesus do?" I don't know if anyone remembers those. It was supposed to be a guide for good American Christians to look at every time they're trying to make a decision and think, I'm free to do whatever I want, but I'm actually going to do this because that's the correct thing to do morally. And Schumpeter was effectively arguing, without that, mankind will just fail over and over again. So personally, I'm a cynic and a romantic, and I'm a pessimist wrapped in an optimist, or an optimist wrapped in a pessimist, and I think that that is the human condition. But national security may be a way to lead us towards the kind of world that the Honourable Finance Minister was talking about, and if someone can present a better one, I'll be walking right alongside them trying to achieve it.
I saw Nitendra ready to go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much. I would like to remind ourselves that when we do yoga postures, if you are doing a forward bend, then in order to balance it, it's good to do a backward bend as well. So what I want to remind ourselves of is the fact, especially Mr. Dinesh, when you said that why aren't we able to do even an iota of progress in this area? I think that's unfortunate that we feel like that, because the unfortunate part is that we are sitting in this room which is made of bricks and concrete. There are houses of bricks and concrete at times that break and then people die. That gets in the newspaper on the front page. Maybe 2 houses in the whole NCR region, but it will come on the front page. The remaining 9,998 houses, where people are sleeping, where people are enjoying their life, where they are protected by the environment, do you ever see that in the news? No, because that's not sensationalized. That's not something that we'll enjoy, because it will come every day. Similarly, whether you talk about AI, it is making a significant difference in the industry and governments and people and so on. I mean, go out in the market and see, make a payment, you do it by Paytm, and even if the person is not well read, the speaker pops up and says that Paytm par this amount, 500 rupees prapt hue. He's doing business. He's now secure that his money has come. That's what AI is doing every minute, every second. Not the kind of news which we like to see in the newspapers. Go out and see the number of electric vehicles that are out there. I don't know if I'm carrying one, but yes, this is not a paper napkin. This is a reusable napkin that is now coming out it's all there. So we have started to use these things. Sustainability is happening. It doesn't make news if we use them. It makes news if we misuse them. So things are changing right now, and I think it is really important for us as people who are perhaps in the strata of the society which can actually move things around, to focus on what has been happening here, what is making the lives of people change, focus on those 9,998 people who are sitting and enjoying the benefits of this brick and concrete. And then we start to focus on how to build more bricks and concrete houses, not focus on those 2 which have broken, and therefore let's all again go back to trees and then sleep under them. Things have changed significantly in every aspect, and we need to only see how to move this forward. And this is, I think, the other thing is also that we always underestimate the human potential. Humans can get things, they can see, they can sense. It takes a while to make sure and make those ripples straight and so on. There will be some misuses and so on, but the society will regulate and eventually things move forward. That's what we should focus on, I believe.
Anyone else wants to add?
Sure, I'd love to. I'd love to also, with due respect, disagree that not an iota of change is happening. To agree with what he just said. Here's the thing. We want people to behave differently. That is the only way we will change the world, correct? And let me tell you that 80% of the people will not do anything. And that's good news. So if 80% of the people will not do anything about these challenges, why is that good news? Because of the genius of Wilfredo Pareto, the 80-20 rule, 20% of the people, and we underestimate the potential of humans, I agree there as well, 20% of us will step up and save the world, and that's been history. The 80-20 has never been debunked. We track companies and we give an award called SL25, Steward Leadership 25, to projects that are profitably solving either environmental or social issues. And we are tracking hundreds of companies. There are many Indian companies that have won the award in the last 3 years. And there are a lot of people in the 20% that are doing amazing innovative work to either address global warming or climate change or inequality or social ills. So it is that 20% that is doing great work. Lots of innovation is happening, and I am eternally an optimist that that will actually move to something. But yes, the only way I will agree is that if you expect all 100% of the people to step up and be steward leaders, that's not going to happen.
Perhaps if I could just add very briefly, the question is, why don't people do good more, right? That's the question. My answer is imagination. We have not evolved enough to be smart enough to imagine all possible ways in which it's beneficial for us to cooperate. And the value of events just like this, of thought leaders or of businesses, is to push that imagination. An example of that for climate, if I make very, very briefly, is it's hard for us to imagine to pay a cost today in our choices, in choosing greener choices, to get a benefit 20, 30, 50 years down the road. But today, you can buy weather derivatives to hedge against weather shocks, but it's very hard to buy temperature derivatives, which will happen 20, 30 years down the road. There are many climate skeptics. Why don't we put their money where the mouth is? We say, if you want to bet that warming will not, there will be not a lot of warming, then Bangladeshis, for example, who will be big time affected by rising temperature, can buy those derivatives. And so the role, that's just an example of markets that we can create by imagining that enable people who would never talk to each other to trade with each other and therefore improve the global public good.
Yeah, I don't think the problem is people not being ethical. One of the things I really like about my job is being able to deal with young people. And I find that, even when they come in at 22, they really do care about the moral universe they live in. And this, takes me back to my favorite economist, which is Thomas Schelling, who wrote a very thin book called Micromotives and Macro Behavior. And what he said was that it's very dangerous to look at equilibrium outcomes, or what we see as patterns in the world, and infer people's preferences based on those patterns, because those patterns emerge when people react to each other. And I think that if there was a way in which we could make more decisions which actually affected our moral universe, I think people would step up and make them. I think for most people in this room, and most people even in the poorest parts of India that I've done field work in, they really do have a vision of what they would like society to look like. I just don't feel they have the opportunity to see that vision come together. And so I think voice is needed. And people don't have that opportunity to, come together and make decisions, and so they make individual decisions. But most of us would happily give up a fair amount of private consumption if we could see some of our social ideals actually come into place. We just don't have the institutions that lets that happen. And so that's where I think we need to go.
Can I just chip in one thing for 30 seconds? Because I've really enjoyed everything everyone else said, and I suddenly feel like everyone's kind of dogpiling on the comment a little bit, and I'm looking at everyone else as being sinners, and I'm somehow holy. Not far from it. What I really meant was, from a Western perspective, being a Westerner, albeit one who's lived in Asia for much of his life, that say, for example, you have a brilliant new innovation that comes out of a European country, for example, that can be very good for the environment, it's sustainable, etc. The overwhelming incentive is immediately then to take that and produce it in somewhere else. So you've got something, it's a global good, but it creates no social good within the environment where the university and the healthcare system, which raised that entrepreneur, should be rewarded for it. All the tax, all the jobs, everything goes somewhere else, and that particular local town and wherever doesn't benefit at all. That's part of the problem, that we can look at something and it's very, very good objectively, like your tissue, but how do we make sure that the rewards of that are spread fairly across all the different dimensions of society? That's all I was trying to say, not that there aren't good people doing good things. There are.
And I think I just also want to clarify, my question was not on iota of change of human beings. I was talking about economic statecraft being the norm for across the world to be followed. But at least it was very interesting and good thoughts which came out of that. So maybe we have time for, I think, hopefully 1 or 2 questions. So anyone from the audience want to go ahead with the first question? Yeah, go ahead. Just introduce yourself and make the question very brief. And also, if you want any one of the specific panelists to answer, ask the name. Yeah.
My question would be, my name is Parthapatim Das. I had a leadership advisory firm by the name PGI Associates in the space of market entry and technology commercialization. The deliberations were really very fantastic. I have a question from the industry point of view. As an enterprise who is in the international space, how to handle the geopolitics variable and the demographic variable. The point I'm trying to make is, with so much of demographic change that's happening globally and the geopolitical variations that we're getting, will long-term strategies work in years to come? Thank you.
I'll try and give a very, very brief answer. If a long-term strategy isn't going to work, that's rather depressing, because short-term strategies certainly won't. The demographic challenge, I presume you're talking about trying to get the correct labor force that you need. And obviously that needs collaboration across lots of different counterparties and stakeholders. And that does take time, absolutely. But again, speaking from the perspective of someone whose roots are in the West, but as I said, lives in Asia and regards it as his home, I can assure you there are lots and lots of towns where I grew up now which are starting to look like emerging markets. And I don't mean demographically, I mean in terms of the socio-economic income level. It's quite shocking how you can deindustrialize towns and they just absolutely wither away, and there's no longer any kind of labor pool there. So you're getting business after business saying, well, we can't use any of the local labor, so we have to go and look abroad. And that's a short-term solution, which absolutely fills a gap, and it balances out a certain demographic problem, but it's not necessarily helping a lot of people who are sitting there just being paid to be unemployed. So I don't know what the correct solution is, but a long-term one has to be the right one, I think. And in terms of the geopolitics, obviously it's a very, very rocky path, because if you look at just what's happened in the past couple of days or weeks in Syria, you can see an entire country may have just been removed from the map and new ones are rising. Just imagine, and I'm sure it doesn't apply to anyone in this crowd, Syria was your major source of inputs or your major export market. Maybe you're a travel agent offering exotic holidays in Aleppo. Well, suddenly you need to shift. So these are going to be problems, and some of them are easier to predict than others, but I think the best you can do, again, is think longer term and try and plot out what you think the future is likely to look like, which is, what my job is supposed to be. And obviously I can't go into full details here now, but there are people who do that.
Last question, go ahead. Go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Rahul. I'm the Managing Director at Rice & House. We are a policy think tank and specialize in foreign policy planning. A quick 15-second comment followed by the question. The 4 trends that will shape the global economy in the coming decade: AI, tech, demography, geopolitics, sustainability. It's not for us to wait for the decade. It's happening today. A very important aspect of our work explores how tech innovation and green innovation plays out on the larger geopolitical chessboards. And I have my colleague Sanjan over here who explored 10 countries, 10 geographies, and said how green technology impacts economic power dynamics as well as the geopolitics. With this, keeping this in mind, how do you suggest we navigate the geopolitical churning around the world, not for the decade, but in the coming few years, maybe 5 years? Thank you.
I'll take a stab. I think we have no chance of long-term strategies, coming back to the previous question, succeeding in the current situation of geopolitics in the world. Because the whole question was, if I come up with a long-term strategy and geopolitics makes it impossible, there's war here, there's this. So here's what needs to happen. We are focusing a lot on science, we are focusing a lot on technology, we are focusing a lot on the science of climate change and the economics of inequality. We need to bring about an ethical revolution. We need to relook at our education systems. The reason why geopolitics is where it is today is because we are obsessed with two things that need to stop: God and country. Those are the two biggest reasons for murder in human history, God and country, by the way. And as long as we keep thinking in narrow confines of my religion and my country, we will never make any progress. So the challenge for geopolitics is, can they rise above to a new form of leadership, which is much more ethical, which thinks of humanity rather than my God or my country? That's what needs to happen.
Thank you. Thank you. With that, I think we are going to bring this very interesting session to a close. Thank you for all the inputs and thoughts which all of you as a panel have given. I'm really looking forward to, as I said, capturing some of these and seeing how do we action going forward. Thank you for your time. Let us give a warm round of applause to the entire panel, please.
Before we close, I'd request the chair, Mr. R. Dinesh, to kindly hand over a token of appreciation to each of our panelists. And now may I request all the panelists to please come forward and stand together for a photo opportunity, please. Ladies and gentlemen, a final round of applause for this panel. Thank you very much. We now move on to the next session, Indian manufacturing, growth story and future readiness. I'm sure all of you are going to find this extremely interesting. We have another set of great panelists for this session. Request you to bear with us till we get the stage ready for them. Take us precisely 3 minutes. Request you to remain as soon as we are ready. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we're ready to start with the next session. We'll soon be joined by all our panelists. I ask you once again to please take your seats. This session, I'm just about to begin a session. Let me just start it off and I'll call you. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'll just call you in 7 minutes. Yeah.
India, a country of a billion dreams. At Bajaj Finserv, we are part of India's journey to making the dreams of Rohit, Diksha, Sejal, and many more come true. We launched our CPBFI program in 2016 to upskill young students and prepare them for employment in the banking and finance industry. Today, our CPBFI program has given wings to the dreams of 53,000 young people.
In this course, I came to know in depth what is actually banking. I am ready to switch from teaching sector to banking sector.
Nobody from my family is in this sector. Everybody is engaged with agriculture.
We have improved both our written and speaking abilities. It helped us boost confidence. At the same time, the classes were so engaging.
On completion of the CPBFI program, students undergo an assessment process followed by workshops by human resource professionals. This is extremely important as these mock interviews are simulated by Bajaj Finserv recruiters, providing students insights into industry expectations from them.
Through our CPBFI program, we have seen family incomes doubling and tripling when a student gets a job after graduation. And we are excited to be a part of India's journey to becoming a global knowledge superpower.
लड़कियां शुभ काम में सबसे पढ़ाई में लड़कियों के नंबर अक्सर ज्यादा ही आते हैं। And you know what? पहले तो अधिकतर लड़कियां छोटा मोटा बिजनेस करती थी, लेकिन अब बड़ा बड़ा बिजनेस करती हैं। नारी शक्ति दुनिया बदल रही है और नारी शक्ति को और भी मजबूत करने उनके साथ खड़ा है SBI, बैटिंग फॉर नारी शक्ति।
Challenging what is, inspiring what could be. This is IMD. It's in our DNA. Curiosity, innovation, Swiss roots, global reach, an entrepreneurial spirit, a pioneering mindset. 75 years in the making, and a future still to be written. A birthplace of ideas, a legacy of world-renowned research. Strategy and leadership that set the bar. Cutting edge in a changing world. Close ties with industry-leading businesses. Transformative custom programs and a champion of startups. A program offering that is consistently ranked among the top in the world. Centers of excellence that lead the way. And an alumni network that continues to nurture and develop the leaders of tomorrow.
I really value the human network that it brought to me.
They have an incredible bandwidth of capabilities, knowledge, experience, and competencies.
I don't think I would have got as far as I have had it not been for IMD.
I was mesmerized.
The light bulbs went on for me.
I thought it would be a better balance between learning about capitalism, making money, but also doing good for society.
I don't think I could do what I'm doing today without actually having had this opportunity to participate in this course, and I'm still extremely thankful.
Probably one of the best investments I've ever made. It certainly helped accelerate my career.
It was one of the most life-changing experiences I ever had.
This is our DNA. This is our past, our present, and our future. This is IMD.
गैस मोबाइल पानी अब ये है जिंदगानी लाइट है ब्राइट है गोल्ड भी भर घर का तू रेंट भी जा
Ladies and gentlemen, may I request all of you to please settle down. We are ready to begin with our next session. All those at the coffee counter, may I request you all to take your cups and please come down to your seats and settle down before we start the session. Hello. Hello. Our next session, Indian Manufacturing, Growth Story and Future Readiness. For this session, we have as our panelists, Mr. Salil Gupte, President, Boeing India, Dr. Rana Hassan, Director, Development Economics and Indicators Division, Economic Research and Regional Cooperation, Asian Development Bank, Mr. Deepak Shetty, CEO and Managing Director, JCB India Limited, Mr. Nadir Godrej, Chairman and Managing Director, Godrej Industries Limited, Mr. Amardeep Singh Bhatia, Secretary, Department for Promotion and Industry and Internal Trade, Ministry of Commerce and Industry, Ms. Sumita Daura, Secretary, Ministry of Labour and Employment, Government of India. May I request you all to join me in welcoming our panelists for this session, who are already walking onto their seats. Please welcome them. Our chair for the session is Mr. Rakesh Bharti Mittal, Vice Chairman, Bharti Enterprises. I'd like to request Mr. Mittal to kindly give his opening remarks and take the session forward. Over to you, sir.
Good afternoon. I think this session is extremely important. Indian manufacturing, growth story, and future readiness. Before I start, I must say we have a very distinguished panel. Each one is well known and an authority in themselves, so I will not get into formal introductions. As we see India heading towards a $5 trillion economy and beyond, becoming the third largest economy globally, my strong conviction and belief is without manufacturing, it is just not possible, and hence manufacturing assumes even more critical role in making India a very, very bona fide superpower on manufacturing and leading the industry. While we see global manufacturing has gone through a significant tectonic change, China plus one prompted companies to diversify, rethinking of supply chain. While it offered significant opportunities to India, I must say in the last couple of years, we have not been able to capture that. And all of us know, many companies who moved out or who went and set up alternate manufacturing and supply chains looked at Asia and many other Asian countries. While I believe that India should have taken a majority of that, and that is something which I'm sure the panelists will, in their own way, share their views on that. 1 billion working force by 2030, huge demographic dividend. The question is, are we ready to nurture and capture their potential and capabilities? And I think that is where industry and academia needs to come and work together. India is in a strategic geographic location, robust policies. That is something which we have a huge advantage. And I believe India is absolutely at the crossroad of unprecedented opportunities like never before. Policies like PLI have been instrumental in boosting investments. Many emerging sectors and very critical sectors have seen large investments coming in. Electronics manufacturing, for example, PLIs have yielded investment of 1 lakh crore, proving almost a resounding success. And more importantly, the electronic exports will move up from $20 billion to $61 billion in 2030. Semiconductors, I think that's, I must thank and compliment the Honorable Prime Minister for his leadership and vision on talking of developing Made in India phone, not just chip to device. Design-linked incentives of the Government of India, India Semiconductor Mission, geopolitical alliances like the ICET have led to $1.5 trillion investments in semicon from various companies in India. Another sector, which I believe is a sunrise sector for India, is space and space technologies. I must say ISRO has done outstanding. Not only work on the technology front, but more importantly, how we can use those technology at very frugal and low cost and put the moon on, the rocket on moon, and we are now preparing for the first manned flight, which should happen, I think, during our lifetimes. Young entrepreneurs and ex-ISRO scientists, they have ventured into designing and manufacturing satellites, making satellite-based sensors. The potential to reach 44 billion from current 8 billion in 2033 is something which is doable. And I must share my own personal example. When we were launching the satellites for OneWeb and Russian-Ukraine war broke up, our rockets and satellites were taken down. We looked at ISRO, and in a very short span of time, they made sure that 2 launches with 36 satellites each went up. And therefore, I see, given the low cost, why would the world not come to India for launching their satellites into space, whether it's a LEO, MEO, or GEO space? And the last I would talk about artificial intelligence. I think it is no more a buzzword. It's a reality which is staring in our face. It's a key disruptor, a very critical technology, and which can be tapped to manufacture on the advanced manufacturing front. And I also believe ported combination of emerging technology with 5G will transform manufacturing in India. As we speak, case studies are building up, more use cases on industrial adoption is happening, and that is something which will increase manufacturing efficiency for India. Clearly, I would say manufacturing economy needs to be complemented with equal efforts and investments towards education, research and development, and skill development. And this is where, when I talked about the demographic dividend, industry academia need to make sure that we have youth ready who are employable. Review the curriculum, more engagement on research and development. So I'm going to stop here and invite Mr. Salil Gupta, President Boeing India, to share his views. Opening remarks. Salil.
Good morning. And what a difference a decade makes. You know, for Boeing in India, as a global OEM, if you talk to somebody who was from our company or one of our peer companies, who had walked into an Indian partner, supplier, about 10, 12 years ago,
many of the representatives from the US who are coming and trying to recruit new suppliers would have walked out of that factory shaking their head, wondering, okay, how long is this going to take? Because remember, the journey to the future of manufacturing, as we now say, in other countries that undertook entry into the aerospace field, Japan, Turkey, is anywhere between 35 and 50 years. That's the length of the journey. When you talk about those countries, you're talking about journeys that go back to the 1960s, early 1970s. That was where we were 10 years ago. Today, the Indian supply chain in our industry is one of the best performing supply chains in the world in terms of on-time delivery, in terms of quality, and in terms of reliability. It is absolutely spectacular transformation in 10 years. And that's why, as you think about our own company's supply chain, we've gone from about 2,000 crores 10 years ago per year in sourcing from India to over 10,000 crores today. That is not, and many people will say, well, you know, you've sold a lot to India, so a lot of that is because of offset or industrial participation. People will say, well, that's because of labor arbitrage or cost. I can assure you that those days are behind us. It is because of capability, it is because of quality, and it is because of reliability. As we come through the pandemic and we come through the recovery from the pandemic to this new accelerated period of growth, we've realized that the resilience of supply chains has had to become a priority. And Indian supply chain has proven to be incredibly resilient over the last few years. Over the 10 years, India's gone in our industry from simple assemblies to complex assemblies to large-scale aerostructures to working with complex composite materials, to now moving into advanced manufacturing, full-scale determinate assembly, where a lot of the work is done upstream and you're able to snap together pieces in final assembly much more easily. I think there's one example that I can give. If you go to our joint venture factory in Hyderabad, on one line you will see the Apache helicopter body for, the Air Force has them, the Army is getting them. India makes those for the entire world in Hyderabad. And the body of that helicopter comes down the line, and it's a fairly manual process. And there are highly skilled, highly trained mechanics and technicians that are doing the drilling and filling and assembly of this very complex piece of equipment. Right next to it is the 737 tail fin. And there what you will see is robots doing 80% of the precision drilling on the tail fin of the 737, again, for a global customer base. Right next to each other, you see the promise and the future of Indian manufacturing. From the optimization of the old to the definition of the new. And I think, I invite anyone who wants to see that factory to come visit it, because it shows you what Indian industry is capable of. And so as we stand here at the precipice of transition politically, as we look at a new administration, same as a previous administration in the United States, as we look at what impact that's going to have around the world and how that's going to reverberate in terms of trade flows and all of that, I think we can be very confident in the future of Indian manufacturing for one simple reason, maybe two. Quality is forever. Capability is forever. No matter what the politics are or may be, India will be part of this future supply chain globally because of what it can achieve now and in the future. And that's been a tremendous journey. So I congratulate all of you who've been part of that with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Salil, for your insightful views. I will now turn to Dr. Rana Hassan, Director, Asian Development Bank. Just for everyone, keep an eye on the timer right in front of you. Thank you.
Got it. Thank you. I'm going to take up from where Salil just left off, that in the Indian manufacturing story is unfolding. It's going to happen. It's just a question of how long it's going to take. And on this, I'd like to draw upon the East Asian experience. At ADB, we come from a region where we work very closely with East and Southeast Asian countries, in addition to South Asia and Central West Asia. So a few takeaways. Now, some of this is very standard, but still worth emphasizing. Number one, the importance of infrastructure and logistics. And we're seeing India making tremendous strides on this issue. The second thing is access to inputs, especially imported inputs. And I think this is where, when you're trying to get into these global supply chains, things change so fast. There are just so many components. I think having a regime which is very predictable for manufacturers is extremely important. And that's something that we have seen in East Asia. Yes, there's all sorts of industrial policy that takes place, but that core access to inputs is predictable, and tariff rates and rates of protection tend to be low. That's just one thing I think we need to pay attention to. And it's something actually for the entire South Asian region. The second thing is labor and land. We need these to be flexible. Now, when it comes to labor, we have labor reforms taking place. We're seeing a number of states introducing flexibility in how that works, and that's really a very positive sign. I think land is one of those issues where in our ecosystem, we still have to get a handle on, and in particular, we need scale. Now, I'm going to let me get to a second issue that's related to land. It's about the ecosystem. What we're seeing in India right now is a state like Tamil Nadu or Gujarat, absolute powerhouses. They've got the right ecosystem. They invite firms. They've got very solid investment promotion, investment facilitation agencies, and they're able to resolve issues. But Tamil Nadu, for example, it's going to be running out of land. And so we've got these other states, Madhya Pradesh, we've got Odisha, a number of other states which can play a really important role. There's land, there's the basics of the logistics there, there's the infrastructure. What they need is the ecosystem. And I think so here, we don't actually have to learn from East Asia on this. We just have to learn from what's happening in our leading Indian states. Essentially what it requires is making that transition from, for example, industrial development corporations, which are, thinking about the engineering, thinking about how to develop industrial parks, to really thinking about cutting-edge investment promotion and facilitation, attracting businesses, helping businesses out. Final point that I'd like to make is, I think, the state level is not enough. We have to go local. And this is a favorite example of mine, that when China was becoming the manufacturing workshop of the World Bank's doing business indicators for China were equivalent to the Republic of Congo. So, you might think that the World Bank got it wrong, they miscoded the regulations, but no, a whole bunch of academics from 3 different institutions got together and said, no, you know what, the regulations on paper are really bad. So what makes China work? And what makes China work is really the incentives and the empowerment that local officials have, because when you're manufacturing a particular product, or you need a certain sort of regulatory apparatus which is specific to that product. You need certain public inputs which are specific to that product. And unless your local actors are incentivized to work with business and empowered to resolve their businesses, you're going to keep on running to this problem. And I just want to end with this point that, a lot of people have heard this China story and they say, this is China. But let me just assure you, it's not just China. It's actually one country after another. In fact, think of the most capitalist city anywhere in the world, New York City. The Big Apple has a mayor's office, the mayor runs for election, single point of contact, and in the mayor's office, there's a deputy mayor's office. The deputy mayor, one of the deputy mayors, has 4 offices that look into the economic sectors that drive New York. Now, New York knows that it's the financial capital of the world, but they don't rest on their laurels there. that office is trying to see how they can attract life sciences firms, how they can attract Amazon, how they can get into different areas of fintech. Even small businesses. There's a whole unit that looks at the small businesses of Manhattan. And that's where I think replicating some of the experiences we've had in the Tamil Nadus and Karnatakas, Gujarats, over to our other states, and also thinking about how to get our local officials incentivized to help manufacturing in their locations is really part of the way forward. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hassan. I now invite Mr. Deepak Shetty, CEO MD of JCB India.
Dignitaries on the dais, ladies and gentlemen, it's indeed my pleasure to speak on a subject very close to my heart, manufacturing. India today is one of the fastest growing economies in the world and is poised to become a global hub for manufacturing and innovation. This aligns with the government's initiative like Make in India and Viksit Bharat, and I'm sure it will further focus on enhancing the contribution of manufacturing to our GDP to 25% from around 16-17% today. We celebrated the 10th year of Make in India initiative as announced by our Honorable Prime Minister, and the initiative has played a key role in transforming India's industrial landscape across various sectors. Various studies show that every job created in manufacturing has a multiplier effect in creating 2 or 3 jobs in the services sector. In a country like India, where employment generation is one of the key policy issues, this makes this sector a critical one to achieve inclusive growth. India needs a strategy to grow manufacturing to 12 to 14% per annum, create 100 million new manufacturing jobs in the next 15 years to realize its demographic dividend and create more depth in various sectors, including the capital goods industries. There's also a need to strengthen the country's innovation ecosystem further by the way of integrating the innovation strategy with the manufacturing one. To achieve this inclusive growth, Indian manufacturing industry will have to transition from a factor cost-driven advantage to more sustainable investment and innovation-driven model with a significant implication on factor requirements, cost structures, and productivity levels. The efforts of the Union government to boost manufacturing are visible, and we are sure that this will translate into an increase in manufacturing gross value added, GVA, in the GDP in the days to come. This is also evident from the fact that government has been making very consistent efforts to support domestic manufacturing. I'll give a small example. From around 14 QCOs in 2014 to 170 QCOs today, spanning more than 730 products, shows the government's focus on supporting domestic manufacturing, particularly in the MSME sector. Further, I know that initiatives are being taken to discourage the second-hand imports and just to ensure, again, that the domestic industry gets support. The tag of Made in India is now looked with respect on the world over. It's time that we certainly leverage this policy, this opportunity. And I would say that we should not keep on looking at X country plus one. I think independently we should look at the opportunity that we have in front of us. Our exports are on rise, be it automobile industry, commercial vehicles, or construction equipment, a sector from which I come. In fact, I'm pleased to mention that the construction equipment exports have grown by almost 3 times in the last 5 years. However, manufacturing itself is changing. If we have to compete with the rest of the world, we need to be competitive, be technology-based, and operate on global quality standards, and accordingly match supply chains, which also needs to be developed. This level of manufacturing is heavily technology-driven. Modern factories and plants are increasingly adopting digital technologies such as artificial reality, virtual reality, Internet of Things, machine learning, and robotics, which we have already started adopting. And in the past, we used to talk about this. I think now it is almost given. If we really have to compete in the industrial sector, we really need to adopt Industry 4.0. And as we get into 4.0, there are already talks about 5.0 because that also brings the element of sustainability. The integration of advanced technology promises not only increased process efficiency, but also reduction in unplanned downtimes, resulting in substantial gains for the manufacturing industry. We today have a government that is committed to support manufacturing-led growth through PLI schemes. We have seen the salutary impact the PLI schemes have made. The National Infrastructure Pipeline, which is really supporting the infrastructure sector, the National Monetization Pipeline, and very importantly, the National Single Window Scheme, which I know Ma'am Daura really had supported some year and a half back, but that's certainly something that we can leverage. India has a unique mix of all that is needed to excel in this sector: a strong will from the government, a young, educated talent pool, access to technology, and importantly, a robust domestic market as well. Sometimes we forget, like in the passenger vehicle, the Indian market is third largest. The construction vehicle, again, the Indian market itself is the third largest in the world. The best of the technologies need to be also implemented across. We have spoken a lot on the democratic dividend. I will give an example very close to my heart. Sometimes it is thought that in manufacturing to excel, you need a lot of years of experience. But today, technology is helping us bridge this particular gap. Our factory in Vadodara, which has 52% diversity on the shop floor, average age is 19 years. We are using the latest AR/VR technology to teach these young kids how to weld. And I can tell you that they are presently operating at a Six Sigma level of standard. So technology adoption will certainly help bridge the gap. What we have seen in the telecom sector, I'm sure will happen on the manufacturing side. To conclude, I will leave 5 points. First, technology-led growth is a reality. The sector needs to embrace it. Second, advanced manufacturing and AI will lead to job losses. That is a myth. There will be shifting of job roles, new profiles will emerge, redistribution of human capital will take place. Third, quality will have to be given. There is no place for poor quality in the new world order. Fourth, innovation will have to be seen as an investment, not a cost. And fifth, an unrelenting focus on skilling will have to be made. I will stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deepak. Thanks. I will now invite Mr. Nadir Godrej, Chairman, Godrej Industries, to share his remarks.
Thank you, Rakesh. Our labor laws have been such that industry couldn't do much in labor-intensive production. There was far too much obstruction. But with the stimulus of PLI, in many industries we can try. Defense exports are on the rise. In mobile phones, everyone tries. New projects are being bold. Now chips are also in our fold. And thanks to our digital stack, there are many problems we can crack. Indeed, India could succeed when knowledge was the need. Much progress we can see in pharma, chemicals, and IT. And I, for one, am very sure the chemicals growth will endure. The pandemic has accelerated future trends long awaited. E-commerce, AI, digitization are growing fast in every nation. While digitization was a trend, the curve is now on an upward bent. The pandemic has made us wise and taught us how to digitize. Even as the pandemic wanes, these learnings will be permanent gains. The post-pandemic world, for sure, will be a new normal, not as before. And these new trends can only grow. Good benefits are bound to flow. The digital world's now at our feet and surely helps us to compete. Corona disrupted supply chains and taught us of the many gains of being more self-reliant or else flexible and pliant. Single sourcing is completely out. Multiple sources is what it's about. Readjusting is a pain, but China's loss can be our gain. When on the scene Corona burst, China was disrupted first. Intermediates come from there, and we also had our share. We very quickly built our stocks and fortunately faced no blocks. Earlier, China's costs were low. Supplies from there did help us grow. Their pollution laws were lax. Their governments now on their backs. Their costs then rose. Some had to shift, and this could give us all a lift. Now, Atmanirbhar is the call. So never again will we stall just because supplies are late. Backward integration's great. Disruptions that caused China pain now prove to be India's gain. India has now clearly won the right to be China plus one. And Europe too has seen much pain. This also can be India's gain. From disrupted supply chains, there can be pains as well as gains. For exports, it's indeed a pain. For Atmanirbhar, it's a gain. Now, clever import substitution is an obvious solution, but our response must be sprightly. We can't take China's threat lightly. For all our companies, we also see a productivity increase from all kinds of digitization, which leads to cost elimination, or at least a significant reduction in marketing, supply chain, and production. But the biggest benefit that I see is enhancing our R&D. We've been good at incremental, but let's do more that's fundamental. individually or in collaboration with partnerships with every nation. But through advanced chemistry as well as through biology, and collectively we all ought to give new technology good support. New horizons are in sight. The future will be very bright. Though recent times have been tough and the going has been rough, if we are resilient and agile, we can swipe the frown and crack a smile, brave challenges to survive, and seize opportunities to thrive. Thank you.
So friends, that was the poet and Nader. I'll make sure this poem reaches the CII membership. And you're a rare poet who left 2 minutes behind, early than your scheduled time. I would now request Secretary Amarjit Bhatia ji to share his opening remarks.
Thank you. I don't think I need to, after the last two speeches, don't need to say anything. Everything has been covered, but still, this is the 10th year of Make in India, and during these 10 years, a lot of things have been done. So just to recall, we've had a lot of work which has been done on EODB, ease of doing business, the business reform action plan, which the central government, along with the states, takes up, and there's a competitive framework also which is available under that. Under that, single window systems have come up at the state level. There's a single window system at the national level. There are a lot of provisions which have been done away with. I'll not reel out the numbers. There's the decriminalization also which has happened, and not only at the national level, but in some states, even at the municipal levels. There's a lot of improvement which can be done, because in our studies also we find there's a lot of variance across the states as far as ease of doing business. Same thing done differently. We need to look at what are the best practices. We know what needs to be done, but how it needs to be done, that is getting interpreted differently and also getting implemented differently at the field level. So that's something I think is something we need to work more. And feedback from industry is always very good. Not only feedback from industry, but also that lens to really look deep into what needs to be improved is something I think which is very important, and we are a collaboration with industry in improving the ease of doing business activities which have been taken up by the government. This is what we've been requesting the industry, the chambers. I think this is something we'll continue looking at. There's a lot which has been done in the industrial infrastructure space. In fact, we were working on a presentation. There are more than 4,000 industrial parks in the country. As someone mentioned, there's a need to improve on the manner in which land is used, manner on which land is optimally used, and also reclaimed back, also unused land which is reclaimed back and reallocated. We'll have consultations on that and see what more can be done. But again, some of the states have put in place very good practices. They've also brought in land pooling systems to bring more industrial land, to make more industrial land available. They've also put in place, Tamil Nadu is doing very well, for example, in reclaiming of land. So very good practices are taking place, and this has helped actually make greater land available to industry. Logistics, Secretary Labour was earlier looking at logistics, and there's a huge lot of improvements which have taken place in logistics also. We have a very good framework which is available, which has been worked out again in collaboration with the industry, and we have reduced logistic cost, and we are aiming to reduce logistic costs through various initiatives, including improving our infrastructure, building capacities in the logistics space. We have the PLI scheme, all of you are aware of, more than 1.97 crore, lakh crore target covering 14 sectors, and we've got very good results in the sectors which have taken off. The remaining sectors also, investments are already on the ground or happening, and we expect that there also will have good results as far as production targets are concerned. We also have put in place a very good ecosystem for startups, and this is, it's happy to see actually that it's not only limited to a small pocket, it's spreading out. In fact, 45% of our startups are coming from tier 2 and tier 3 cities, which is very encouraging. Not only that, in each of the sectors, sector-specific interventions are being worked out so that this startup movement deepens. And it's very encouraging to see the response not only within our country, but also from other nations which one receives with regard to startups and the collaborations which are coming up. With regard to opportunities, now there are a lot of opportunities which have been thrown up, firstly on account of the investment which are being planned, which have been done by government, and which have been planned, which are planned. In fact, if you see the Viksit Bharat 2047 targets, they are very ambitious targets, and these itself should drive a lot of investments in the private sector, whether it is on account of investment in in meeting the sustainability goals or bringing in clean energy. Power sector, for example, I was discussing with Mr. Godrej, there's a huge demand for transformers, which is coming up because of distribution lines, transformers, which is coming up because of the new generation capacity which is being put up. So these investments in infrastructure is creating adequate domestic demand. On the export markets side and integration with the supply chains, there's also a lot of work which has been done in terms of reduction in tariffs. The weighted tariff has come down substantially and is almost at the world average level. But of course, there are pressures that this should be increased by the domestic industry, which we need to look at why these requests keep coming up. Why are we not competitive enough? FTAs have been entered into. We also have, again, opportunities on account of the supply chain disruptions which happened subsequent to COVID. We also have new technologies, new materials, new sectors which are throwing up a lot of opportunities. Yesterday only I was talking about data centers. If data centers have to come in here, the amount of power which will be required, the energy which will be required for that, the innovation or the productivity effect which it will have. Somebody was telling me yesterday on this. The new materials which are being used in the footwear sector, for example, the GCCs which have come up, the textiles, the new materials which have come up. And not only that, the opportunities on account of the entire spectrum of skills that we have at the moment, the skills which you can use for assembly, to the highly skilled who can do the most complex designs. Now, keeping in mind the stability in policy, the works which have been already done under Make in India, and also the opportunities which are being thrown up. Now, industry should tell me, where is the long-term vision? Where is the scale that we should be looking at? We should be building up for, not only looking at the domestic market, but also the export markets. We should be looking at these for bringing in our investments. We should be looking at how to make our downstream industry also competitive, so that our skills build up at the upstream level also. Products which are not manufactured at the moment for India, how do we get the technology for that? We have enabled collaborative frameworks like the ISET and all. How do we use that to get the technology which is not available at the moment? Whether we acquire it, we have joint ventures. Look at the startup and innovation ecosystem. What can be outsourced to the startups? What is it, the companies which, what are the problem statements which can be given to the startups? This is something which is extremely important. And lastly, what is needed to be part of the global value chain? We can't be looking at domestic markets only. As Honorable Prime Minister said, make in India, make for world, which is an essential part of the Atmanirbhar Bharat. I think we need to look at that and keep that in mind while looking at manufacturing in India. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhatia, for your special address. I would now like to invite Secretary Sumita Ravraji to share and deliver her special address.
Very good afternoon to the esteemed panelists, esteemed audience. Very happy and privileged to be standing here before all of you. I wish I also had a poem. Yet, while I don't have a poem, I'll try to make this a little structured, and I hope I'll be able to contribute to some learning from our ministry, which can be shared. When we talk about future-ready manufacturing, there are many dimensions to it, as we already know and as we realized listening to the panelists. There's the aspect of the vision, which is already in place in terms of the Viksit Bharat at 2047. Growth is there. We are the fastest growing major economy in the world. There are the other dimensions such as opportunities. Many of the opportunities were pointed out, the global supply chains, the global value chains, the FTAs, the investments, the FDI. There are the policies of government and also both central and state government. There's the logistics aspect to manufacturing. There is also the technology aspect. We've been talking about Industry 4.0, artificial intelligence, and so on. There's the aspect of innovation, and there's the aspect of labor as well, which is why I'm here before you. Labor aspect would be with respect to the workforce, which must be skilled, and there's also the aspect of the reforms. Labor reforms, how are they impacting industry? How are they impacting manufacturing? I aspire to keep myself within these, within this framework as I talk to you. Talking about labor, first of all, we have a demographic dividend, and we do know that by 2030, our working age population would be about 65% of our total population. Having said that, today, more than half of India's population is under 30 years of age, 66% under 35 years of age. We are the solution to global labor shortages. And in the next 10 years, something like 24% of the incremental workforce in the world is going to come from India. That is our strength. And that is also a strength for our domestic manufacturing. Coming to the aspect of the workforce. Today, if we look at the RBI's provisional estimates, we have something like 643 million people in the workforce, the provisional estimates. This should be about 64 crore plus people engaged in economic activity in the country, in various sectors, including manufacturing. When we look at our labor force, we get the impression that a lot of them are in the unorganized sector, which is also true. But at the same time, there is fast formalization of the workforce. They're entering social security, they are adopting social security, they're entering the social security coverage. And since 20 17, in the last few years, about 7 crore Indians have entered the Provident Fund pension coverage, the EPFO as we say, and this is driven by job creation, employability of these people, and also leads to formalization of labor. Having said all this about our workforce, I would like to talk a little about Indian manufacturing, which all of you know better than me actually. But I heard a sentence said by one of the panelists, what is the Indian industry capable of? Well, the Indian industry is, of course, when we look at programs like Make in India, which have an aspiration to improve the share of manufacturing in the GDP and also getting more people, more labor employed in the manufacturing sector. When we look at the success of the production-linked incentive scheme, I heard the word resounding success from one of the panelists in terms of the production in certain sectors, the mobile manufacturing, the pharma sector, the food processing sector, and so on. We are aware of that. Apart from that, these two major schemes, when we look at the sectors, automobile manufacturing, India is one of the largest automobile producers globally. And that is on account of our skill production, our cost effectiveness, and our robust supply chains. If you look at pharmaceutical healthcare, we are the pharmacy of the world today due to our affordable, high-quality medicines. 20% of the generic medicines of the world, 60% of global vaccines come from India. We have emerged as a global hub for electronics production. We are aware of that, and this is again because of our competitiveness and the contribution of the labor force. In renewable energy equipment, in textile and apparel, you name it, we are largest textile garment exporter today. Skilled workforce again, apart from other factors. Defense manufacturing, we heard one of the panelists talk about it. Indigenous manufacturing is becoming stronger. Government initiatives such as Atmanirbhar Bharat are promoting the self-reliance in defense production. I could name so many sectors, chemicals, petrochemicals, engineering goods. And in engineering goods, our expertise in precision engineering, large-scale production, food processing, gems and jewelry. Amazing that 90% of the world's diamonds are processed in one city. And we have skilled workforce. India is a global leader. In short, we have a very strong manufacturing base in several sectors, which is supported by Make in India, it is supported by the production-linked incentive, and very shortly it will be supported by the employment-linked incentive scheme. And that is one scheme where I really need to talk to industry today. The employment-linked incentive scheme was announced in the budget 24-25. It will give hiring and employment incentives to employees and employers. There will be 3 parts to the employment-linked incentive scheme, and the additional cost of employing additional workforce will be offset for years that will be defined. If you look at the budget, Part A and Part C will support for 2 years, 4 years respectively, and Part B for 4 years. Basically, we will be incentivizing the employer, particularly in the manufacturing sector, towards the contribution of the EPFO, the Employees Provident Fund contributions for a period of 4 years. And then there's another, the Part C, which I've been alluding to, that is only for the employers, where additional cost per employee will be offset. This is a scheme you must look at more deeply, and in the interests of time, I'm not going too much into it, but this is an important scheme which will be supporting manufacturing, it will be supporting first-timers, it will be supporting employability of labor and formalization of the labor force, leading towards a more productive manufacturing base in the country. Apart from this, several other things are happening. We are aware of the global capability centers, where a lot of innovation is happening, and we have become the hub of global capability centers, the global competence centers in the world today. More than 1,700 global competence centers are there in India. They employ more than 3 million Indians, basically in engineering and technology. A lot of artificial intelligence, support to innovation worldwide is happening. Recently, I went to see the Volvo GCC in Bengaluru. It's amazing the way we are supporting innovation in the world. That's the kind of capability and expertise our labor, our young people have here, right here in India. And that is what supports domestic manufacturing, and that's what's supporting Make in India, and that's the way to go forward. Apart from this, I'd like to briefly touch on labor reforms. We have heard about the labor codes, the 29 labor laws, which lead to complexity, multiplicity of labor laws, of compliances. As we are aware, these have been codified into 4 labor codes, and the Parliament has passed them in 2019, 2020, simplifying the ease of doing business, bringing about ease of doing business, reducing compliances, and leading to decriminalization of a lot of the provisions. And single registration, single licensing, single returns, these are some of the things which we are already putting in place even before the codes are notified. So briefly, to give you an overview, I spoke about our demographic dividend, the strength of our workforce. I spoke about our manufacturing strengths and how the two synergize. I spoke about certain other strengths, such as the GCCs, as an example before you all, apart from the startup culture and many other things which are happening in India, showcasing our innovation. I spoke about labor reforms. I spoke about the employment-linked incentive scheme, which I do hope the industry will be looking at and will be using to make themselves more competitive. At the very end, I'd like to say that our manufacturing competence is built on our cost efficiency, our skilled workforce, government support, the policies. We have key industries which are proving themselves on the global level, and going forward, continued investment in infrastructure, sustainability, skill development will further enhance our global positioning. And what is important is that the industry leverages the new technologies, the policies, and the practices in the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Secretary Davraji, for your insightful remarks. Due to paucity of time, and I'm cognizant of the next session, which has to start at 1:15, I'm just going to go in the reverse order of 2 or 3 questions. So if I may, ma'am, we'll start with you. You know, you are looking after the most critical, one of the most critical departments and the Ministry for Labor, which really impacts the industry as a whole. And when we see the quick commerce industry gross merchandise value, you know, going up by 280% to over 3 billion, one thing is, how can we look at gig economy becoming part of formal employment? And a quick would be on, do you see any fear of losses with AI coming in?
Okay. The first question is a little short to answer. The gig and platform workers are a growing part of the country's employment scenario. And we are aware that something like almost 1 crore workers are already there in the platform economy and the gig economy, and it's going to grow further. By 2030, we expect more than 3 crore workers in the gig and platform economy. The labor code on social security has outlined social security benefits for them, and we are putting together a scheme for the gig and platform economy workers, because there is no traditional employer-employee relationship defined for the gig and platform workers, but we really need to bring social security coverage for them so that they can be more productive and they can support the country's economy, the e-commerce, the manufacturing sector, service sector more effectively. So that's about the gig and platform workers. We are very much, cognizant of that requirement. Coming to AI disrupting the employment scenario, we do have a task force which is studying that along with industry and also the labor unions. Our sense is that AI is something which probably should be adding to jobs. As we also see in the automobile sector, for example, we do have robots which have been brought in, but then the same labor force has been redeployed to an area where training to use those robots or to maintain that machinery is happening. So, and I think there are experts who are also indicating that AI need not necessarily disrupt the employment scenario in a negative manner. So we do look forward to the positive impact of AI on the economy is expected to grow, and also on employment. Thank you.
No, thank you. I think you rightly mentioned we need to see AI as a very productive tool. And of course, make our youth ready for that. And that is where I talked about the industry, academia, they need to sit together and ensure that we are looking at future of jobs. Let me turn to Secretary Bhatia. When we talk of the Atmanirbhar Bharat mission, when we talk of Prime Minister Modi's vision of Viksit Bharat, one thing which keeps bothering the industry is the ease of doing business and high cost of doing business in India. And while with great fanfare, the single windows are launched by every state government, and there's a push from your ministry as well, on the ground, things don't move the way it should. So what are your views? And my suggestion is that I think this is something where you must bring all the state governments on one platform and the same wavelength. Because ultimately, it's India which is going to benefit. It's Indian youth which is going to benefit.
So, as I mentioned, we have a framework in place. We have the BRAP framework, the Business Reform Action Plan, which the central government works very closely with the state governments and the industry. So there are around 280 or so reform actions which are already identified and part of that BRAP, which has been worked out in collaboration with the industry. Now, most of the action lies with the states. Most of the reforms which have to be done are at the state level. So we do an annual assessment on where each of the states stands as far as the identified reforms are concerned, and then we share it with all the states to know how they stand compared with the other states. We also have a bucket of good practices in the salient reforms which we share with each other. Now, what is happening is seeing one state doing something good, other states are also picking up and also replicating sometimes, and sometimes even improving on that. So you've seen this happening in Gujarat, you've seen this happening in Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra. Now, Odisha is having a very good ease of doing business single window system. Telangana is having a good single window system. There's a very single window compliance framework at the industrial parks level which has been set up in Andhra Pradesh. So things are happening. Now, there are obviously gaps, and there can be much more which can be done at the state level. We are in constant collaboration. We hold regular workshops also with them. In case any further suggestions are there in improving those single window systems or deepening those reforms in any specific state, the industry is most welcome to come up with us, and we'll have collaboratively then sit with the states as well as the industry and see what more can be done.
Sure, we at CII will come and have a chat with you. But I think one suggestion which I want to give here is, when we talk of single window and in a time-bound manner, the applications need to be approved. My suggestion is if it can be within the first 7 days, any queries or any objections, that's a window which whoever is heading the single window has. Generally, it is towards the last week of the expiry period, and therefore it sort of becomes open permanent, almost on permanent basis, and the delays start to happen. But we'll come and have a chat with you. I would
with a solution also, possible solutions. So how do we put in place mechanisms?
I think one is, rather than the annual assessment, I think this should be an ongoing engagement with states on a monthly basis, because ultimately India needs to benefit from all that. And industry will be very happy to sit with you. CII will come and we'll have a chat. What can be looked into in a different way? If I may apologize to my fellow panelists for skipping the questions. And I know we are standing in between lunch, so everyone is really eager to go. I'm very happy to share with you that the Trade Enabling Standards Information Portal, TESIP, developed by the Confederation of Indian Industry along with the Institute of Quality. It's a comprehensive one-stop online window designed to address the standards challenges related to promote trade. So you will find the entire information, what is required from the domestic viewpoint or any country where you want to go and do business. All that information will be available and sits on this portal. It provides a holistic repository of domestic, international, relevant private standards applicable to key sectors and export markets. I must compliment CII and the Institute of Quality for having put together this framework and the portal, which will be hugely beneficial to the industry at large and more importantly the SMEs. If I may request Secretary Davra and Secretary Bhatia to launch the portal, please.
Welcome to the Trade Enabling Standards Information Portal, your gateway to comprehensive information on standards and regulatory requirements for industry to promote trade and India's quality infrastructure framework. Developed by the Confederation of Indian Industry, this online platform is designed to support businesses, industries, and other stakeholders in navigating the complex world of standards, technical regulations, and conformity assessments for different economies and major sectors to promote trade. This portal is one-stop solution to provide you details and relevant information on the entire ambit of domestic and international sector-specific database on standards and technical regulations which facilitate trade. The portal is designed with tabs and drop-down menus to provide easy navigation through different sections. Selecting an option leads you to detailed information about chosen topic. You may like to scroll through Standards Regulations section, wherein the drop-down menu will take you through the major national, international, and voluntary standards and regulations based on a sector. The Literature option provides you with various applicable information about the QI framework. Additionally, for quick reference, the search bar enables you to search the portal using any keyword based on your needs. If you have any feedback or queries, feel free to reach out to us at standardsinfo@cii.in. We're always here to help you stay informed and compliant in a rapidly changing global market. Thank you for choosing the Trade Enabling Standards Information Portal, and we hope it serves as a valuable resource in your journey to meet quality and regulatory standards for trade.
I must thank my fellow panelists and ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. I hope this session was productive, and if we can give a big hand to the panelists here. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mittal. Thank you for chairing this session. May I now request you to kindly hand over a token of appreciation to all our panelists, please. Can you first hand over the... Acha, okay. Ladies and gentlemen, let me announce, since I see many of you walking out, lunch is in Raja Bagh, and when you leave for lunch, kindly carry all your belongings, because we are going to reorient the room as well, and if you leave something behind, it just may be misplaced. So kindly carry all your belongings with you and go for lunch to Raja Bagh. We will see you post-lunch at the same venue, and enjoy your lunch. Look forward to seeing you again. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mittal. Thank you all for being with us. See you after lunch at the same venue in time for the next session. Thank you. The next session is at 2:15 and I look forward to seeing all of you reconvene here for the session. Thank you very much. Please enjoy your lunch.